Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there and a good evening to you. It is Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock. And don't listen to Kevin, you know full well this isn't left wing. I'm just not far to the right wing. So I'm in the centre and I'm happy to hear voices from either side of the debate. That's the whole point of this programme. It should be the whole point of every programme that we hear all voices from all sides of the debate. So at midnight, what I'm going to be talking about is whether you're prepared or not to give up stuff for a better defence. Look, we know now that America under Trump is not going to be there for us in the way that it once was. And you can argue that he's right, that Europe should be taking better care of its own security. And I do agree with that. I do agree that defence spending needs to be improved across the continent. I do agree that we should be taking a bigger stake in the peace around Europe. And that also includes, for me, that European countries, the UK, Germany, all those other countries should be at the table when peace in our area is discussed. Because if it's a peace that's not long-lasting, if it's appeasement, then where does that leave us? If Ukraine can't join NATO, which is, by the way, the cheapest, quickest and easiest way to secure peace at the border, whatever that border might be, then there has to be a backup plan, right? There's no point just putting a few thousand troops from all over Europe there, not even wearing a blue beret, so they won't be there under the United Nations. They will be there as individual or joined up forces, keeping a line. There's no point in that if there isn't another threat, if there isn't something else to stop Russia from spending the next 5 years gathering its troops, getting a bit of extra money, hoping that sanctions are lifted or whatever the agreement is going to be between Russia and the US before Ukraine even get a look in. What's stopping them from doing it again? And don't tell me they won't, because if, again, the appeasement deal goes through and Russia gets exactly what it wants, gets to keep the territory that it stole, it gets to not have to pay towards the rebuilding of Ukraine, it gets everything and a few sanctions lifted here and there as well, they've won. They've got everything they want. And now they know what the enemy is really like, they'll go away and get better equipment, better soldiers, better training, so that next time when they do it, they already took Crimea, there will be a next time. So, and that's on our doorstep. And when Keir Starmer said Ukraine is our front line, he meant it. That's why we've been pouring money into Ukraine. And by the way, collectively, Europe has put more money in than America has. So we do need to be at that table. This is about us. If America want nothing to do with it, then they're over there. It's not going to affect them. And as I've told you before, Article 5 of NATO says that you only need to join, if there is an attack on a NATO country, you only need to join in if you think it's the right thing to do. It's not definite. You don't have to. There's no law saying that America has to. And we can see the way America's going. Now, I have no argument with Trump on the idea that the Europeans need to spend more money on their own defence. I have no argument with that at all. So how are we going to do it? What are you prepared to give up? Because it will cost. It will cost us a lot of money. Rachel Reeves now is facing a 12 billion tax rise to meet Starmer's defence spending pledge, just to increase to a level where we're at 2.5%. Keir Starmer's ambition to bolster the defence budget implied the Chancellor would have to raise taxes or cut spending by $6 billion a year alone if she wants to hit the target by the end of the decade. So are you prepared to give up stuff for defence? Or do you think, nah, we'll be all right. We'll be fine. What's there to worry about? Give me a call. 0344 499 1000, and you can text the word talk and your message to 87222. So we'll be talking about that at midnight. Let me tell you what else is coming up. We have Vincent Moss, former political editor, who's going to be here to go through the newspapers. I suspect there'll be quite a bit on those talks that went ahead in Paris without America. Josh Rom will be here also to talk us through some of the highlights of the BAFTAs. Love a BAFTA. And Alex Three Lines Irons will also be here to talk through the sport from the weekend. But first, that Ukraine summit. The Prime Minister Keir Starmer joined European leaders in Paris today for an emergency summit on the future of Ukraine. Before leaving for France, Starmer had penned an editorial. He's got a lot of time to pen editorials in the Telegraph. He seems to be doing that quite often, where he said he is ready to put UK peacekeeping troops in Ukraine if and when the war ends. And this afternoon he demanded the US provide a backstop to any peacekeeping force, and he's due to meet Donald Trump next week. Well, the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz said that Europe and the US must work together on security, but he called discussions on sending peacekeeping troops to Ukraine premature and inappropriate. Well, joining me now is Peter Conradi, who is Europe editor of the Sunday Times and author of Who Lost Russia? How the World Entered a New Cold War. Hello, Peter. It's great to see you. Thank you so much.
Good evening.
Good evening. Do we have to completely assume now that American military support, as we've known it in the past, is exactly that, in the past?
I think we really don't know, to be honest, what is going on. I mean, if you think back, the amount of things that have been said since last Wednesday, when Donald Trump revealed that he'd been talking to Putin, is absolutely extraordinary. I mean, the timing of it has been helped by the fact that there was a big meeting in Munich at the weekend of the Munich Security Conference, which brought together all manner of the great and good politicians from America, from Europe and whatever. There's been an awful lot of talk, but, we still don't quite know what kind of a deal is going to be done between the Americans and the Russians and possibly the Ukrainians. But what we certainly do know is that, as J.D. Vance, the vice president, put it in one of the more contentious speeches at the weekend, there is a new sheriff in town. There is Donald Trump, and he's prepared to challenge, I think, the whole basis of relations between America and Europe since the end of the Second World War.
And it also seems like he, some of the stuff I've read, Peter, saying that he wants to make an agreement with Russia and with China so that they can all drop their enormous spending on defence and be on a more friendly playing field. But what does that mean for Europe? Because if suddenly Russia had some sort of support from the US, that really makes, I don't know where we stand in that.
No, I mean, I think, the underlying message is that America under Trump does not really care about Europe and does not really care about Britain. It cares about itself. A clue is there in the, MAGA, Make America Great Again. It's not Make America Great Again and look after our erstwhile allies. And, the Americans have increasingly, even before Trump came along under Obama, have been obsessed with China and the threat from China, the competition with China. That, for success of Americans, particularly for Trump, is the main issue. And this war going on in Ukraine is almost a little bit of an irritation for Donald Trump, and he just wants to get it sort of sorted and done. Doesn't really care much about the Ukrainians themselves. And I think underlying it also is a desire by Trump to somehow separate the Russians from the Chinese, because the Chinese have increasingly come behind the Russians since the beginning of the war in Ukraine, and Trump wants to sort of separate them out and somehow, to increase his chances when things really get tough with the Chinese.
looking at the conversations, though, that are happening now with Europe, and as I said in my talk-up, most people don't have a problem with the idea that Europe has got to start paying its way. It's got to pay its fair share for its own defence. But is it a concern that a lot of people think, well, no, we'll be all right. Russia aren't going to do that again. We'll be fine.
Yeah, I mean, I think you say most people are agreed that Britain should pay or Britain and Europe should pay their fair share. Okay, they're agreed when you talk about in sort of abstract terms like that. But if you say, okay, well, at the moment we're paying something like 2.3% of GDP in Britain on defence. Say we had to increase it to 3, say we had to increase it to 3.5. We're in a very, very tight budgetary situation, as Rachel Reeves has repeatedly stressed since Labour came to power. So, all right, what are we going to have to give up in order to spend more on defence? And if you start saying, well, actually, we're going to lock money off the NHS, we're going to lock money off all manner of other government spending, and or we're going to put up taxes again, I'm not sure whether your initial statement, well, we're all agreed that we need to spend more on defence, I'm not sure we would all be agreed that. That's, I think, the fundamental problem.
But it's... When we look at defence, I mean, look, the major problem is that we've just been through a long period of relative peace, right? Particularly with the UK and in Europe. We've had that peace for a long time. But it's not that far ago that we look at the disaster of a sudden change in politics, a sudden change in direction for leaders to go in, and suddenly we're in a world of pain. And aren't a lot of countries just going, well, we should be okay, but I mean, defence is there for those moments in history where you get that change in political will and you get that change of direction. And if you're on the back foot, woe betide.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly the problem. I mean, we don't think about defence very much until we need it. Yeah. And that is the problem. But the problem then is that, it requires huge amounts of money. How much does a tank cost? How much does just one missile cost? It's a huge amount of money. And so there is this fundamental problem that the government is going to face. It's going to have to increase spending. Where does it get that money from? And also, it's going to take quite a long time, for investment in extra military spending to sort of work its way through the system and actually increase our capability, I think.
But isn't there an argument to say that there's peace through strength? That if you have the strength in the first place, then which is what nuclear weapons are, right? They're a deterrent. If you have that strength in the first place, there's no need to concern yourself with peace.
Yes, that's certainly true. But I mean, if, for example, Britain and Europe had been spending a lot more on defence than they do at the moment, one could say, well, would Putin still have invaded Ukraine? And I suspect Putin would still have invaded Ukraine, because even if we'd had a bigger military, we probably still wouldn't have used it to defend Ukraine. I think, fundamentally, it gets down to interests and the sense that fundamentally Ukraine is more of interest to Russia than it is to us. Let's say a few years back, Ukraine, I think for Britons, would have fitted into this category of kind of a faraway land about which we care very little. I mean, that's changed, obviously, since the invasion. But, when it comes down to it, I'm too old to go and fight in Ukraine, but I've got a couple of sons of prime fighting age. Would I want my sons to go to fight in Ukraine to defend Ukraine against Russia? I'm not sure I would. How many 20 and 30-year-olds, male or female, would actually be prepared to go and fight? And I think that is the fundamental problem that we face. It's very different if you're in Poland, if you're in Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, where you're very close to the front line and you have very, very direct experience of what it's like to be run from Moscow. But, Russia is a long, long way away. The Russian army is not going to reach Dover. And so that is the problem. I think it's interesting if one looks at the meeting that's been going on in Paris today with the various European leaders and Keir Starmer also. I mean, look at the Spanish. I mean, the Spanish are very, very reluctant to commit military forces. Although actually, slightly paradoxically, so are the Poles, even though they're spending something like 4.7% of GDP on defence. I mean, it's a complex picture, but I think also one should bear in mind that we're having all these kind of discussions about who would send what and so on before we actually know what the deal is, or even whether a deal will be done. And I think it's difficult then not to agree with Olaf Scholz, the German Chancellor, who confessed that he was, quote, a little bit irritated by all this discussion and saying it's premature because, we don't really know who we would be sending to support what and to enforce what.
Is it possible for Ukraine to continue to defend itself without America?
I mean, if you look at, American military equipment has been very, very important to them. So have European supplies. I mean, I'm not a military strategist. I mean, the Russians are running out of men. They're running out of military resources to some extent. The Ukrainians more so. I mean, it will be bleak for the Ukrainians, but I mean, they're not at the point where they need to give up entirely, or would need to give up entirely. I mean, there've been suggestions that in the past few weeks, if you look at the speed, people, very detailed analysis has been done about how much territory the Russians are gaining or losing per week or per month or whatever. The Russians are not advancing as fast as they would have done before. But, obviously, if the Americans are there and the Americans are not supporting them anymore, it's going to be a lot harder, obviously, for the Ukrainians.
Now, one thing that Vladimir Zelensky said was that he would like to see a European army. And this has been, this has been talked about for decades, that I can certainly remember in my youth doing stories on this and the reluctance for a European army, the cost of it, etc., etc. But could we see something? I mean, that would again mess up defence spending, presumably for each individual country, and it would certainly mess up the EDF as well, unless they expanded that. Is it likely that we could see some pooling of resources?
Would Britain join a European army? I mean, we don't want to join the customs zone. I mean, we've done Brexit. The idea that we'll say, no customs zone, no kind of common market-y kind of things. We're not going to harmonise our veterinary regulations. But sure, yes, we're going to merge our army with the French or the Italian army. I don't think so. And I don't think any other European country really takes that seriously, in the sense of, if you understand a European army as just one big force with everyone's army sort of put into it. I don't quite know where Zelensky got that idea from. I remember I was based in Brussels back in the 1990s, and people were talking about it then, yeah. and the Daily Express was getting upset about it even then.
Yeah. I do remember that.
I don't think it's going to happen. That being said, there has been for many years a degree of increased cooperation between different countries and their armies. You have a sort of joint German-Dutch brigades, or joint German-Polish brigades. And I mean, obviously they're all working together in NATO.
That's the European Defence Group, isn't it?
Yes, it is. But I mean, it all gets the whole thing gets very, very complicated indeed. And there's always this question of, well, does it, will it undermine NATO, which means that some countries are, France has always been more enthusiastic about it because they've been less Atlanticist. The Germans have always been a little bit reluctant about this idea because they believe much more in closer ties with America. Now, whether that will survive Donald Trump is also not clear. I mean, I think the point is that this is, this week, as it's turning out, or the period since last Wednesday, it's just turning into this incredible period that we just all, I think, need to take a little step back, to take a bit of a deep breath and just wait and see what happens, because otherwise this is just sort of classic Trump. It's kind of picking up a pack of cards and kind of throwing them all in the air, I think.
Just briefly, if you can, at the end, we are looking at Vladimir Zelensky apparently being left out of the early stages of any conversation. If they reject a peace deal that is thrown together by the US and Russia, where does that place them?
I mean, who knows? I mean, you've got a situation where you've got a huge number of Ukrainian troops on the front line who've been fighting for up to 3 years in some cases. They've seen their comrades killed. They've been involved in the sort of most brutal First World War style close-up
hand-to-hand
fighting.
Yeah.
Are you then going to actually say to them, okay, guys, time to go home now. Let's, it's all over. All that you were fighting for, we've just given up. I mean, are they all going to peacefully back home? Not necessarily.
No, I don't. I just don't know what's going to, and well, none of us know what's going to happen next. But Peter, I will talk to you again about it, no doubt, when we do. Thank you very much indeed, Peter Conradi, then Europe editor of the Sunday Times and author of "Who Lost Russia: How the World Entered a New Cold War." Quick break. Back in a sec.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, a good evening to you. It's Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock. And coming up at midnight, I want to have this conversation with you because it matters, right? And it's going to affect us all one way or t'other. And that is about increasing our spending on defence. 24-25, we're set to spend 56.4 billion on defence, which really pales into insignificance compared to other things that we pay for. Pensions, 135.5, the NHS, 192 billion, disability, 39.1, universal credit, 67 billion, PIP, 21.6 billion. So there's all of these costs and expenses that we pay for, but we don't pay a lot on defence. And reasonably, that's because we think, well, we're fine, right? We haven't needed to use defence for years, since the end of the Second World War, which is not strictly true because we have been involved in other things that we perhaps shouldn't have been involved in. But where do you stand on it now? Do you think that Russia isn't a threat? Do you think that America will always leap to our defence? Do you think that China isn't a threat? Do you think that the Middle East is calm and lovely and that nothing will affect us because we're a tiny little island off the coast of Europe? Do you think that it's all going to be calm and lovely and therefore spending money on defence is a total waste of cash? You'd rather see that money spent on other stuff, more immediate stuff. And the problem with defence spending is you don't need it till you need it, right? If we're on the back foot in 5 years' time and we haven't put any money into our defence, in fact, our defence budget has been slashed, or the number of soldiers and airmen and seamen and women have all gone, then we've got to quickly recruit then, and then we have to recruit from civilians who don't want a part of it. So how do we do this? Are you so certain that we are secure in an ever-changing world? I mean, are we going to have to go to Canada's help, part of the Commonwealth, if Trump does decide he wants that as a 51st state? Are we going to have to go to the aid of Greenland because that's part of Denmark, which is part of NATO? What if we have to do stuff in a changing world? And look, you might go, oh, that's doom-mongering. But that's what defence is about. It is about peace through strength. It's about saying, look, you know, don't attack us, don't attack our friends, because we're in this together. We support each other. And if America's going to now back out of that to the degree that they're suggesting they are, then what do we do? How do we defend ourselves? And maybe you don't think it's that important. Maybe you're old and you think, well, it won't be me that has to go to war, or I'll be dead by then anyway. But there are young people in this world who may have to pick up the pieces of us not doing what is right now. And look, I've been in a war. I've seen what it's like, and it's disgusting. I spent 2 years with people digging up mass graves, of seeing the wounded, most horrendous wounds you've ever seen in your life, seeing what war does to a nation. I don't wish that on anyone, but I fear that unless we protect ourselves, that this could happen. And I don't want it to. So it's not about building up our armed forces to go to war. It's about building up our armed forces so we don't have to. That's the point. Give me a call. 0344 499 1000.
Across the UK. On on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, good evening. This is Talk, and it's Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock. And joining me now is Alex Three Lines Irons, Talk Sport presenter and producer. Alex, good evening to you.
Good evening, Petrie.
Right, so Manchester United lose to Tottenham Hotspur. What's going on?
To be fair, in a normal season, that probably isn't very surprising to say, but it's just the fact that both teams are not doing very well. They're both struggling in the bottom half of the table. None of them are really threatened by relegation, but the fact that they're both down in, it's not even, 11th, 12th. They're down. They were down before the game in 14th and 15th place. Manchester United still in 15th. It was James Maddison who scored the winner on his return from injury as Tottenham beat, weirdly enough to say, Premier League strugglers Manchester United, which is something that feels like it might have been coming for a while, but I don't think anybody ever expected to happen. It was just a very, very odd game, quite even in chances in parts, but neither side really seemed to have they were up for it, but never had any kind of cutting edge. Tottenham earned their first win in 3 games in all competition. That's, of course, after their horrific loss to Liverpool in the League Cup semi-final and their loss to Villa in the FA Cup 4th round. Their victory will now ease some of the pressure off their manager, Ange Postecoglou. They're now 12th in the table, above Manchester United by 3 points, who are in 15th, and 12 points clear of the relegation zone, which still you'd think there's no real chance of them going down, especially with the 3 teams in there already, Leicester, Southampton and Ipswich. But this Premier League season has thrown up quite a few surprises. So I wouldn't, if I was a Manchester United fan, I wouldn't be not looking over my shoulder and seeing the teams down there and thinking, well, if they pick up a couple of wins here and there, we could be in trouble. But it wasn't just Manchester United who were having problems on the pitch. Spurs fans were protesting off it. Before the game, 1,000 or more than 1,000 Tottenham fans attended a protest against the club's ownership and chairman, Daniel Levy, which seems to be an ongoing problem. Spurs fans not being happy with money not being spent on players, but they've got this state-of-the-art stadium, which I think is not just the envy of every club in the Premier League, but every single club in the footballing world.
Really?
And maybe it feels like the Tottenham fans don't really know what they have, and Daniel Levy has done very well to get the club where they are, at least in regards to showing them as a big force, because they haven't won anything that says they're a big force, but they've got this fantastic stadium which now hosts NFL games. Is a fantastic venue. If you get to go there for a football game, it's brilliant. And it feels like Spurs fans are, maybe from an outsider looking in, are just a little bit more entitled than they should be for silverware.
Oh, really? Because, I mean, these are relatively 2 big ones, aren't they? And if they're playing games that are not really that inspiring, what's going wrong?
Well, both sides have had problems with injuries. Ahmed Diallo was one of the players who was injured for Manchester United, and he's going to be injured for the rest of the season. Same with Lisandro Martinez, who's been pretty big for them at the back this season. He will be out for the rest of the season. And Spurs have been... they've had injury problems all season with players going down with a lot of leg injuries. Their injury list is about as long as my shopping list is these days. So there have been problems with injuries with both sides, but Manchester United have been poor all season. Amorim came in and essentially said that things are going to get worse before they're going to get better when he took over from Erik ten Hag, who didn't have a great run at Manchester United, but he won trophies. He won the FA Cup for them last season, and they got to the final the year before that. I feel like as a manager, he was pretty good, Ten Hag, and maybe Manchester United fans were expecting more from him. But then it's Manchester United. They're one of the biggest clubs in the country, if not the world, and maybe they're still not suffering, but they're still in a period where, it's the post-Alex Ferguson era, and they haven't quite found where they've settled yet. They've tried with different managers. They tried with Louis van Gaal, who did pretty well for them. Jose Mourinho got them to finish second in the Premier League about 9 years ago. But it doesn't feel like the Manchester United of old, which I grew up with, watching them win everything.
Yeah.
And it just feels like those days have long gone, and it's a Manchester United that I don't think is going to come back and be a big club in regards to winning the Premier League year after year for a very long time. I think they're in the wilderness, and we probably won't see them near the top of the table for quite some time.
Yeah, that's really sad for my son. I tell you.
Not for me. That's fine for me.
I know it's fine for you, but I don't talk to my son about football anymore. Well, yeah, we keep that off the table.
Yes,
let's talk about Yannick Sinner. Yannick Sinner, a 3-month ban. And why has this caused a row?
So Britain's Liam Brodie believes that Yannick Sinner's 3-match ban for doping has been timed to impact the world number one's career as little as possible. The Italian accepted an immediate 3-month ban, are from the World Doping Agency on Saturday after reaching a settlement over his 2 positive drug tests last year. I think one of those drug tests was around about the time that Wimbledon was on. The 23-year-old who won the Australian Open in January is suspended from the 9th of February to the 4th of May, so will be eligible to play at the French Open, the next Grand Slam of the year, which begins on the 19th of May. Brodie said to BBC Sport that he does think that it's been, he says, I do think a lot has been put into where the ban should take place to impact Sinner's career as little as possible. But the ban ends the day before the Rome Masters, which is the biggest tournament in his home country and the perfect preparation for him to go and play the French Open. I don't think he loses any ranking points or his number one spot either, so it's an interesting ban. He also said that he was speaking to some people earlier, and they said it was kind of like a Premier League footballer being banned over the summer. Oh. So a lot of people, at least Liam Brodie isn't particularly happy with where the ban is taking place. But you know, it's a quiet period for tennis at this moment in time, and maybe he feels like it should have been over the busiest summer period when you do have the Opens like the French Open.
I mean, that's kind of fair, I think. You know
that he isn't doing it then, or should.
No,
be.
I think if you get a ban, it should hurt, right?
I agree with you.
Yeah, and if it doesn't hurt, what's the point of it? There's no point.
Essentially, he's now on holiday for 3 months.
Yeah,
and can
exactly.
Practice, and then he'll be back for his homecoming, essentially, for the French Open in May. So
it's like if I was sent home on full pay for 3 months, I'd be like, okay.
I'd be happy with that, but I don't get paid otherwise, so, you know.
No, me either. I don't get paid if I don't turn up. Rugby League, top flight season starts with the lowest scoring game in league history.
Yes,
what?
So Super League's opening weekend of the 2025 season had a stark contrast in results across the first 6 fixtures of the campaign. So the first game of the new season was the reigning champions Wigan Warriors, who were at home to the Lee Leopards. And the game went to golden point extra time, which is like overtime in American sports like American football and in ice hockey. But that's because the game after 80 minutes was 0-0. And that's the first time that's ever happened in Super League history since the competition was created in 1996. Lee Leopards eventually won the game 1-0 in golden point extra time, thanks to a kick from Gareth O'Brien, which, if you're a rugby league fan, you'll know that golden point extra time kicks is essentially how this man makes his money. He did that, I think, in 2015 in what was then the £1 million game between Hull KR and Salford Red Devils, and playing for Salford, his kick kept them in Super League and stopped them from getting relegated that season. But what also ended up happening that weekend, or last weekend, is that we had one of the biggest wins in Super League history, as St Helens beat the Salford Red Devils 2 days later by a whopping 82 points to 0.
Wow.
Which is what happened, and why that has happened is because Salford, who are they've just been taken over, and there is a salary cap in Super League. They still haven't decided what their salary cap is meant to be. So Salford Red Devils have essentially protested and put on their reserves, and while doing that, conceded 15 tries and lost by 10 less points than the team that we were talking about a couple of weeks ago, who play in the park in Acton, lost to Leeds Rhinos.
I mean, that is a really good protest, though, isn't it?
You
don't think we're worth the money? Here you go. I have the
Yeah,
subs.
the reserves can come on.
Just quickly, I don't know if you saw the ice hockey between the
Between the
USA
US and Canada. I did see that, yes.
What was it? 3 fights in 9 minutes.
3 fights within the first 9 seconds.
9 seconds.
So that they had the ice or the kick off or puck off, whatever it is. Within the first 2 seconds, there was a fight between a player from Canada and a player from the States. Restart again. A second later, another fight breaks out. So that's 2 fights in 3 seconds, and then they double that time to have another fight in the space of 9 seconds. That, of course, came after the fact that they had the national anthems, which is Americans love a national anthem, as we know. And before the game, both sides had the national anthem. And with it being in Canada, the American national anthem was booed by the home support, mainly because of what's been happening over in America with Trump essentially trying to claim that Canada would love to be the 51st state, and the Canadians showing Americans that that's definitely not what they want.
I mean, I heard the Canadians, there was a clip I saw of the Canadians singing their national anthem. I've never heard a more combined group of people singing at the top of their lungs, trying to prove a point. But I wonder if they can continue. I mean, you can just imagine the banter on the ice, isn't it? Oh, 51st state, and then a bit of a punch up. Yeah,
but these players, they all play with each other in the NHL anyway. They're all pro ice hockey players in the same league, so they all know one another. But it's just something that maybe they are waiting for it to spill over, and it could have also been a bit of a show for the fans as well, being like, right, okay, these players, they might be playing together, they're on opposite sides, they're going to go at each other for the first 10 seconds, get in the penalty box, and then they'll play the game for real after they've aired out those issues.
God, that is extraordinary, though. 3 fights in 9 seconds. I'd miss
ice hockey's a brilliant sport to watch if you haven't seen it. Not just for the fights either.
It's just terrifying. It's terrifying to me. Alex, thank you. Great to talk to you. Alex Three Lions Irons, TalkSport presenter and producer. Right, stay where you are. We're talking BAFTAs next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
And a good evening to you. This is Talk, and Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock. And with me now is Josh Rom, of course, our spectacular entertainment journalist. Now, listen,
I want to apologise first and foremost. Josh forgot his coat yesterday when covering the BAFTAs, and last year in 2024, the marquee where the red carpet was absolutely boiling. Yesterday it was freezing, so if I sound a little bit bunged up, I can only apologise.
That's why.
And also late nights, early starts, marathon days.
This is your time, isn't it?
This is my Super Bowl if I'm a sports journalist. This is my election night if I'm a political journalist. Yeah. This is the biggest night of the calendar for me. So, I will try my best.
Now, I've not heard David Tennant sing before, but I thought he did a good job of it.
No, it wasn't any Ariana DeBose rapping about all the women that caught social media alike, but I thought it was a good effort.
Yes, I would walk 1,000 miles to present another BAFTA show or something.
I mean, it was just very BAFTA, if I'm going to be honest. And there were cameos galore. Jim Broadbent, I really liked his cameo. Dame Helen Mirren right at the beginning. It's definitely star-studded.
It really was, actually. And David Tennant, again, being the presenter on that, although he said he'd be a little less snarky this year.
I liked it snarky.
I liked it snarky, but he said he wouldn't do that this year.
What a shame.
What a shame. So tell me the exciting highlights.
Yes, so I think let's start with what is the biggest shock of the night, which was Mikey Madison winning for Best Leading Actress. Now, Demi Moore has been the front-runner all throughout award season. She won at the Golden Globe. She won at the Critics' Choice. We were kind of expecting her to win the BAFTA. If not her, then Marianne Jean-Baptiste for Mike Leigh's film Hard Truths. You know, that is British filmmaking at its best. Well. She is so brilliant in it, and it's so nuanced, it's a very diverse performance, but it was a character study. Yeah. One that was very much, slow, methodical, British, something that the Americans... Mike Leigh. Yeah, but the Yanks wouldn't get it. So we thought, if not Demi Moore, then Marianne Jean-Baptiste. So then the envelope was opened and Mikey Madison's name was read out, which was a huge shocker to all of us, bearing in mind Anora is the film that is gaining momentum. It had a huge sweep in LA. It won the Writers Guild, it won at the Directors Guild, it won at the Producers Guild, it also won the Best Film at the Critics' Choice as well. So it's been a film that's been really gaining momentum, slow burner. Mikey Madison, they've had a real push for her in terms of campaigning here this week. The past couple of weeks, she's been on a lot of radio shows. She's been on Graham Norton doing the talk show circuit. Sorry, I can barely get my words out. Doing the talk show circuit, so she's been in BAFTA voters' faces, real push. So I caught up with her on the red carpet. This is her first nomination. She is a first-time nominee. I asked her, well, how is she feeling about attending the BAFTAs for the very first time?
Any chance to celebrate film I get is one I will take. So I'm very lucky to be here. I think it's going to be fun, I hope. Yeah.
And, being a first-time nominee, how do you feel coming to an event like this? And, you've worked with some amazing people, not just Sean, but also Quentin Tarantino and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Does doing like this make it all worthwhile? Does coming to an event like this make it all worthwhile?
Oh, it's all always worthwhile just to be in a film. I've been lucky for every single job I've had, and I'm so grateful that I'm a working actor and have the opportunities that I've earned for myself. And so, no, I love filmmaking and I love making movies, and that's really what the drive is for me, is to just continue doing that.
And I was going to say, the film as well, it's very daring in its subject matter. Was there any part of it that scared you, or any part of the film that intimidated you, or did you just dive straight in, go full guns blazing?
Exactly that, yes. We had such an incredible cast of talented actors, and everyone was so committed and wonderful and kind, and so I was very lucky to work with incredible people.
And just very quickly, the moment you found out about your Oscar nomination, what was that like?
Very exciting, yes.
Yeah, because she's nominated for an Oscar as well, isn't she?
Yes,
So
she is,
that's pretty cool.
and basically she plays a sex worker. So that's when I was talking about the daring subject matter of the film, and very much in her speech and then backstage afterwards, she was talking about the sex worker community and meeting people within that community and seeing the way they're mistreated and underrepresented. So
yeah, I'm a huge supporter of those men and women as well. I think that they need that support. Let's just quickly talk through some of the other winners before we go to your next clip. Best film, but not in English language.
Oof.
Emilia Perez.
Emilia Perez. Well, Zoe Saldana did win for Best Supporting Actress. Emilia Perez is the musical film about the transgender drug kingpin that's been on Netflix. Divisive is one word.
And the first trans woman to be on the women's shortlist.
Yes, that is indeed a fact there, one that is dividing plenty of people within Hollywood, as you can imagine.
I don't actually have a problem with it.
Well, I mean, the thing is,
it's not sport.
Well, I have more of a problem about the film because I don't think the film's that good.
Yeah, well, that's another issue.
And actually, this film is basically the divisive film across all of award season at the moment, because this actress that we mentioned, Carla Sofia Gascon, the first trans woman to be nominated for BAFTA and Academy Award, etc., racist and offensive tweets resurfaced, which has just killed her campaign. The director of the film, Jacques Audiard, bearing in mind he's a French director, made a Spanish film. Nothing wrong with that, except he called the Spanish language the language of poor and migrants. And then he cast also several actors which Spanish is not their first language as well. So Emilia Perez, even without Carla Sofia Gascon's racist and offensive tweets, bearing in mind Netflix are now refusing to pay for any travel, they're not flying her out to any events, they're not paying for any styling.
It never ceases to amaze me that marginalised communities attacking other marginalised communities, it just seems so stupid.
But the thing is,
it just seems so dumb. Why would you do that?
Well, the thing is, every single person has a problem with this film. You can imagine the anti-woke people hate this film because it's a musical about a transgender drug kingpin. The woke people hate the film as well because they call the film retrograde in its depiction of LGBTQ issues. Then you've got the Mexican people from Mexico absolutely hate the film because of the lack of research into all the cultural into all the disappearances when hundreds of thousands of people.
It's unlikely to do well at the Oscars. Then.
I think Zoe Saldana and Best Film Not in an English Language is the best that it can hope for at the Oscars. Conclave, of course, was the big winner last night, coming home with 4 awards. Best English, Best British Film, and also Best Film overall. But The Brutalist, we know how much I love The Brutalist. And that was another big winner of the night, coming away with 4 awards. Brady Corbet won for Best Director. Adrian Brody won for Best Leading Actor. It also got cinematography and original score. But on the red carpet, I caught up with my bestie, Felicity Jones, and it was so brilliant because she was just moving along and her publicists were kind of dragging her away into the ceremony, and I was just like, "Hey, Felicity," and she was like, "Oh my God, hi, oh my God, so lovely to see you again." And I was like, "Can I just ask a quick question? How does it feel?" Well, here's the answer.
It's fantastic. It's you know, so much thought and prep goes into these events that it's always a little surreal when you're actually here and like, it's happening. I'm wearing a dress, I'm standing on a red carpet, it's all come together. But we're just, you know, it's such a lovely team on The Brutalist, and it's so nice to, you know, all be getting together. But it's actually a genuine competition tonight because I have no idea what is going to win what.
Because
so
the fact
we'll be on the edge of our seats.
Because the fact that all 3 of you and Brady and Mona are all nominated, the fact that it's sweeping across the board, that must be incredible.
I know. Let's hope we all win.
Well, sadly, they did not win, unfortunately. Well, The Brutalist won loads, but sadly, Felicity Jones did not win for her role in this. She was nominated in the Best Supporting Actress category for her role as Erzsébet, but also nominated alongside her, well, not alongside, but in the Best Supporting Actor category, was her co-star Guy Pearce, when I also reunited with him, caught up with him again on the red carpet, where I asked him, you know, just, you know, being nominated at a ceremony, how does that feel?
It's great. I mean, you know, it's really lovely to be nominated. To be honest, the more profound feeling is just to be part of a really great film. That's what means the most, you know, because that's the thing I'm aiming for. That's the thing I'm always striving for, and that's the thing that, you know, you're sort of thinking about is finding good work and doing good work in good work. So the awards are wonderful, but they're a byproduct of having done good work. So,
and of course, you started on Neighbours. Do events like this put it into perspective of just how far you've come, how far you've grown as an actor?
I don't know that events like this put it in perspective. I think just, you know, having worked for 40 years puts things in perspective, to be honest. Yeah.
Quite a long time.
Yeah, quite a long time. I'm quite old now.
He's a right silver fox, isn't he?
Oh, bless Guy Pearce. Oh, I remember when we had the sit down with him. You were loving that, weren't you?
He's a silver fox.
What
about Ralph Fiennes, though?
Yes.
I mean, this is, of course, Conclave, like you said, picking up 4 awards.
Picking up 4 awards. Sadly, Ralph Fiennes did not pick up an award for Best Leading Actor. He gave a brilliant performance in Conclave, but unfortunately, this is just Adrian Brody's year. Yeah. And Adrian Brody was just so brilliant in The Brutalist, which is a real shame for Ralph Fiennes, because he really does deserve his flowers. But of course, Conclave, people think, oh, it's a religious film about the Catholic Church. It's actually more of a political thriller. And I asked Ralph Fiennes about, you know, talking about the Catholic Church, depicting the Catholic Church.
And I think people are often talking about the drama or the intrigue, which is part of it. But I think what Robert Harris is interested in is who is the right spiritual leader to occupy this place, this chair, this position. And I think that's a very serious question about who is, because the Pope is a very, very influential figure. So their ability to call on our ethical responses, our sense of faith, is whether we can be atheist, it doesn't matter. The Pope is the Pope, and so I think that the film takes that very seriously.
And Rafe, getting nominated after all of these years of work, after all of this year in the industry, the fact that your work is still being so well received, I mean, is that just the best feeling? How does that make you feel?
Well, of course it feels good. I mean, you're only as good as the other actors you work with. I've been very fortunate over the years to have had wonderful partners, and that's, I think, often what, you know, they raise your game.
So Ralph Fiennes there, they raise your game, he said, on the depiction of the Catholic Church in Conclave. And of course the Pope's not very well at the moment, so who knows?
I was going to say, that was not a reaction, the best reaction, what I thought was good for Conclave winning Best Picture last night. That was not what I was expecting.
Josh Ron, thank you very much indeed. Stay where you are, Papers next.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, great to have your company, and for the next hour we are in the company of Vincent Moss, who's a former political editor.
Hello.
Nice to see you. Now, just before we delve into the papers, although there's a lot in the papers about what I want to talk about, and that is the Prime Minister suggesting that we do need to start looking after ourselves. We have no clue which direction America is going in anymore with their isolationist policies. There's no doubt, is there, that we have been leaning on the States for a few years because they spend $1 trillion a year on their defence, and we've sort of knocked back our own spending, or at least not increased it. But we're going to have to make some really harsh choices in order to start taking care of ourselves. What do you make of that?
Well, we are, but we're already at a point where even when Labour came into power, we were at the highest tax rates for 70 years. There's huge pressure on spending with hospitals and education. We're spending 2.3% of our GDP on defence, and Trump wants to spend 5%. They only spend about 3%.
Yeah.
Most of the European countries spend somewhere about 2%, still not the 2.5% that both the Conservatives and Labour have promised to do. So we need to spend more, but changing it from 2.3%, our current spend to 2.5%, costs about £5 billion. That's not really going to change much. And a lot of the retired generals, funny how they always speak out when they're retired and when they're not actually working for the government, a lot of them are talking about we needing to move it to 5% of GDP, which would be a fortune. So it's like anything. Nobody really needs or wants to fund the military when there's no problems, but we've got to think about it seriously when we're facing what's really a massive crisis, because we have relied on America, as has the rest of Europe. We may need to look after ourselves, but I fear the reality is we could up defence spending as much as we like, but without the protection of the American Air Force and the American missilised systems, whatever we spend probably isn't going to be enough without the Americans there as a backstop.
It is really tricky because as part of NATO, of course, the United States of America is the biggest player, and I fail to see who we can replace that with, unless we did a deal with China or the Arab nations, and I think that they've got their own a job to do and defending themselves. We are in a bit, well, I hate the word unprecedented, but certainly since the Second World War, to be told pretty much you're on your own now. And I keep saying this, in Article 5 of the NATO agreement that suggests that, and all it does is suggest that if one NATO country is attacked, then all NATO companies go to their defence. That is a nice to have, but it's not a legal requirement. So even if there was to be a war in Europe, Trump could happily, easily say, well, we're not getting involved. It's got nothing to do with us. We're not doing it. And as a NATO member, they can decide not to if they think that they don't want to, or they've got to, well, it's nothing to do with us. So we know now that we're going to be on our own. But the problem is we've been through such a long period of peace, but we had peace from a point of weakness. Now we need peace from a point of strength. And I don't know who's going to want to spend any more money on it.
Well, I think everyone's going to have to spend a bit more. I mean, Germany's got elections coming up at the weekend, so they don't want to commit too much ahead of that. And it's interesting that obviously the nations that are closest to Russia are upping their spending most. Well, who'd have thought that? But it's going to be up to Spain, Germany, Italy, us, to spend more and actually come up with a plan and realise that America can't be relied upon anymore, and we're going to have to up our entire defence capacity. But you look at parts of our defence, and we're now down to about 70,000 troops. There have been suggestions that we should even discontinue the Royal Navy because it's so ineffective, and our new carriers seem to be up and being serviced for a lot of the time. So it's a really difficult position, and it couldn't come at a worse possible time, because the Chancellor's already under pressure on her fiscal headroom, which seems to have disappeared, the £10 billion she left herself. And the options for her are very simple at the moment on tax and spend. She's either looking at massive tax rises or massive spending cuts, or doing something else, and there isn't really a third way. Or borrowing more, and she certainly doesn't want to do that. So very, very difficult to see a way out of this. I mean, what a headache for a government that's only been in power and has beset with loads of problems for 6 months, and it's facing these huge challenges because, frankly, defence has been underspent for years and years and years, and it didn't really matter.
Decades, actually.
Yeah, decades, and now it does matter.
But a lot of people will be saying, yeah, but you know, chances are we won't need it. Chances are we'll be all right. I mean, we're not going to be attacked by Europe. But you have a real shift in political balance going on in the world at the moment. And the German elections, AfD is unlikely to win this election. But the far right are rising. And we may need to defend it. I mean, we just don't know. But a lot of people go, oh, you're just warmongering. Look, I've been in a war. It is the last thing I ever want anyone ever to go through. I'm certainly not arguing for defence spending for war. I'm arguing for it for peace. Because from strength, you can guarantee peace. That's what nuclear weapons are for, right? Mutually assured destruction. That's what they're for. They're not to use. They are to say, we have this weapon from a position of strength, don't attack us. Whereas if we're in a position of weakness, we get attacked.
That's right, and Russia is better than anybody, and Putin in particular, at seizing those opportunities and sensing those weaknesses. And not only that, but his timing's pretty good in terms of he knows when to go into these countries. And it's like any bully. If you back down and you don't confront them, they will just move further and further and further. And after Ukraine, or bits of Ukraine, it'll be other bits of Ukraine. And where does it end? And people are fed up with the idea. Many people I talk to say, well, we're spending £3 billion on Ukraine. Why are we doing that? Well, the answer is quite simple. If we don't stop this in Ukraine, it will spread further to the west, and it may end up on our doorsteps. And people say, well, you know, maybe the Ukrainians should think about leaving the bits that they've got, the Donbass and Crimea and things like that, to the Russians. Or people say, well, you know, if it was England, would we say, well, let them have Kent and Sussex and a bit of Surrey, maybe not the good bits or whatever, but so long as they're not near us. We wouldn't say that if it was our country. So
well, it's appeasement, and appeasement across Europe has never worked before. And if we do, if there's an appeasement deal is reached between the US and Russia, leaving out Ukraine and Europe, how is that even going to be possible to hold it? And there is talk, I've heard talk, that Russia, the next thing they plan to do, I think it's Estonia, is where we've got troops, is to take a tiny slither of Estonia, a tiny bit, to test NATO resolve. Because it's unlikely that NATO will look at that and go, it's only a little bit. And then he's tested NATO, and NATO hasn't responded. And there's a reason he doesn't want Ukraine to have NATO membership, which of course is the only secure way of protecting Ukraine from further attacks from Russia. But we know why they don't want them to have it, because that would be from a position of strength. Right?
Yeah, and he relies on people not taking action, Putin, and that's what he's done with bits of Ukraine. And let's not forget, there's potentially very valuable mineral and all sorts of energy reserves in Ukraine. So it becomes very, very interesting. That's one of the, if you like, deals, the art of the deal that Donald Trump is now looking at, is trying to cut some sort of deal. Everything is a deal to this man, where he was trying to cut a deal with Ukraine and say, look, we'll help you out, but we want incredible amounts of your reserves. I mean, potentially even far more than the Germans were forced to agree to at the Treaty of Versailles. Huge amounts of money. So the Ukrainians potentially stand to lose either way. And the idea that they would be carved out of a deal that directly affects them as the negotiations go on just between America and Russia would be crazy. No other sovereign nation would put up with it. We're at a really dangerous time at the moment, aren't we?
I absolutely think we are. And what concerns me the most, actually, is this odd relationship between Trump and Putin, and them making deals, right? Like, what's to stop America saying, look, we want Canada. You know, if we're going to do that, we'll let you have that. And we'll share the minerals out with you from Canada, providing, you know, or Greenland, or whatever. I don't trust them.
No.
I don't trust either of them, because they're both in it for what they can get out of it. And unless America stands up to Russia and says, you can't have it all, You can keep that land, but they join NATO.
Yeah.
But you can't have both.
That's right. There has to be something in it for Ukraine. And at the moment, the offer seems to be
46,000 soldiers have died.
Yeah.
What for? Nothing?
Yeah. And lots of civilians, and they've lost lots of land, and just in the same way that we wouldn't say, well, you can have bits of England and maybe a little bit of Wales or something, but you're not having most of it. We wouldn't put up with that.
No.
So why would we expect the Ukrainians to do that?
No, it is absolutely preposterous. Although a lot of people think, well, just let America and Russia get on with it. But that is to trust them, that they've got anybody's interest but their own at heart.
No, exactly. He just sees the whole world as one big real estate deal, I fear.
Oh, talking of which, he's just been fined $464 million, hasn't he?
Yeah.
And nobody's giving him the money.
No.
So he could have to sell his real estate business.
Yeah.
This is how brilliant a businessman he is, people. But they're saying his real estate isn't worth it, and they don't value it to where he's valued it. Unless the president, Musk, gives him some money, he's in trouble.
Yeah, although he's got all his other enterprises like his Bitcoin enterprises and his
Trump Bibles
and his social media schemes and all the rest
and
of it.
his sneakers. Did he not do some trainers
That's
at
right.
one point?
Yeah,
Trump
merchandising.
Trainers?
So
yeah. Well, I mean, we'll wait and see. I think I'm just like, I cannot believe what position we're in at the moment. If you told me this last year, I'd have gone, shut up, Vincent, have another pint. Let's have a look at USA Today. I've been trying to look at American papers. If you don't have it, don't worry, I'll let you know what it says. Firings demoralise government workers. Not much of a headline because you would expect that. But the termination notice came before Valentine's Day, and Elena Mosecchio's heart was shattered as she broke down crying in front of her 2 young children. She has bills to pay, a mortgage, preschool tuition, car payment, and a scared family. This is laid off federal employees, say the Trump administration has upended their lives. And what's been interesting, of course, you've seen that they sacked those 400 people from the nuclear weapons program, not realising that those people were fundamental to keeping those weapons from blowing up, and they can't find them now. They sacked them all, deleted their company email, and without it they don't know how to get in touch with these people, so they've had to put an ad in the newspaper saying, if we fired you, please come back to work.
Brilliant. Couldn't make it up, could you?
You literally could not make this up. That's what happens when you get a bunch of teenagers going in and going, we don't need these people, let's get rid of them. Unbelievable.
Well, I've been reading some of the emails from people, and it's the ones that I find sort of, you need a heartstone not to laugh, and it's sad that people lose their jobs, but they're literally writing emails saying, I voted for you, I never expected this, you fired me, can I please have my job back? Well, in the run-up to this, he made it clear he was going to get rid of all these people. Many of them still voted for Trump, not all of them, and they're now surprised that they've lost their jobs and are now writing begging emails saying, can I please have my job back? Because when you said you were going to fight these battles and get rid of all these deadbeat employees, I didn't think you meant me.
I didn't think you meant me.
Yeah.
And it's the same with the farmers who were getting the anti-inflationary money from Biden. In their farms, so they were given these subsidies to keep their farms going, to keep prices down, to stop the prices going up on the shelves, right? And so he introduced this money, and now all these farmers who voted for Trump, by the way, you can see they all say I voted Trump, but I didn't expect this, have had their subsidies taken off them, and they're going, what? This is not what I voted for. And you kind of go, yes, it was. If you paid any attention, this is what you voted for, because he hasn't lied much. You know, he said, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to cut these programs. I'm cutting Biden's programs. I'm cutting all these jobs. They're all going to go. And all these people go, yeah, but that's not me. Brilliant. What the heck? I mean...
No, that's right. At least, I mean, over here, the criticism is of the government that they put some taxes up, like national insurance, that they didn't talk about. But in America, to be fair to Trump, he said he was going to do all of these things, and people now seem to be annoyed and upset he's actually doing what he said. It's as they never thought it would affect them. So when he said he was going to get rid of large swathes of public sector workers, public sector workers just assumed, or many of them did, that when he was talking about public sector workers, he didn't mean me. And now they're all out of a job, and literally out of a job on their ear, very little notice, no pay, no nothing.
Nothing. Just done. Just don't come back in. And there's another story here. It says Trump alters US approach to Putin, out with he's a crazy SOB, a butcher and war criminal who cannot remain in power, and in with, I think he wants peace. I think he would tell me if he didn't. I trust him on this subject. Those are Trump's words. We'll see.
Well, let's see. I mean, Russia has released a couple of Americans that were held hostage for a long time, seem to be released. So there's a little bit of change. But I mean, there can't be any more untrustworthy person in the world than Putin, and yet so.
No, I really don't think, unless you include Donald Trump. Right, actually, let's take a quick break before we go to the British papers. So Vincent and I'll be back in just a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, great to have you with us, and by us I mean Petrie and Vincent Moss. Not Petrie and Vincent Moss, we're not married, it's Petrie and Vincent Moss. Yeah, just to be clear. Now, the Daily Mirror for Tuesday, PM's Ukraine warning to US. It's maybe too strong a word, warning, I would have thought. The headline says, test of strength, the Starmer, no peace if America walks away. And basically what he's saying, isn't it, is that, look, we can declare a peace, we can try and hold a peace, but we can't do that with a threat or some support if Russia goes, well, we don't believe you, and just continues doing what they're doing. And we need US backup. Are we going to get it?
Well, absolutely need it, because if we taking many steps ahead, as Keir Starmer seems to be doing, by talking about putting potentially British troops into Ukraine as a peacekeeping force after presumably a ceasefire and a peace deal happens. Estimates seem to be that you'd need about 100,000 troops, at least 30,000, potentially as many as 100,000 because of backup and those in training, to keep it safe. So there's no way that the UK could commit to more than a few thousand. And even then, if anything happened, you would still need American air cover, American support and American backing, because what happens if Putin did decide to sort of take steps against the peacekeeping force in the same way that you see with NATO forces in southern Lebanon, very ineffective really in many ways. Israel still does what it wants. So if somebody did transgress and come across the border, Russian troops, what would happen? Well, if it's just a few peacekeeping forces, not very much. They wouldn't be able to repel them if they needed to without the support of the Americans.
No,
so they're always critical.
There would also have to be a very large buffer zone.
Yeah.
And the argument would then be, would that be in the Ukrainian territory that Russia has stolen, or would that be in which means that Ukraine would lose even more land to this? But it would have to be like, you know, a big, huge buffer zone. And it's also very concerning that the British military are suggesting that those troops that I mentioned a while ago that are in Estonia at the moment, supporting them there, and to make sure that Russia doesn't do what was being suggested that they do, they'd have to be hoiked out of there and put on the Ukrainian soil or Russian soil or green zone to protect the peace there, which leaves Russia with an open doorway to the rest of Europe, really, or NATO countries.
Yes, and you've already got several European nations being very reluctant or saying no to the idea of committing any troops to what could be this peacekeeping force. I think already Poland, Spain and Germany have said that they're very reluctant to do that.
I'm interested that Poland has said that they're reluctant to do that, because they spend the most on military. And I would have thought it would be in their interest to do that. But the thing is, it wouldn't be under the United Nations Blue Beret either. It would. I don't know what it would be. It wouldn't be a Blue Beret.
No,
it would be a military force, which
and who would be in charge?
Has its own problems.
Yeah, exactly. Who would run it, and then who would provide the support if it was needed? And would it have missiles? And where would it get them from? How would it respond to any Russian incursions? So there's a load of unanswered questions. But it does seem as though Keir Starmer's trying to plan for that bit when we haven't even got through the first bit, which is whatever these potential peace talks that are taking place in the Middle East directly between Russia and America. Now, Europe's trying to sort of look as though it's got a role in this, and the truth is at the moment we see what Keir Starmer's doing, Macron's doing, and Zelensky are all doing. They're not part of the debate. Of course they should, but at the moment they're central players, but they're non-playing combatants, really, literally, in this, aren't they?
I know, it is absolutely bizarre that the idea that any peace deal can be done between US and Russia and then give that to Ukraine and say, well, that's the deal, is just crazy to me. I don't know how that's even sustainable, which it isn't.
It isn't, and especially on the terms that Trump is talking about, which is sort of potentially not giving any of their own land back to them from the Russians, and potentially tying it into a huge and lucrative for America deal to do with minerals and things that would involve with the Ukrainians paying vast sums, potentially, you know, 500 million or huge amounts of money back to America for the support that America has. And America has given a lot of support to Ukraine, but expecting all that money to go back.
Right?
Yeah.
They agreed to when they told Ukraine to get rid of their nuclear weapons. It was on the basis that they would be protected by the US and by Europe. Get rid of your nuclear weapons and then we'll look after you. And we haven't really, or we've done the bare minimum. So it's not like Ukraine has asked us for something for nothing, right? This was part of a deal that was done. And I don't know how we are supposed to protect. I mean, it seems to me that Keir Starmer wants to be this European defence force, if you like, to have the UK at its head. And I'm not sure if that's the right thing, but he's playing. We have got nuclear weapons, I guess, so maybe that puts us at the pinnacle of that situation.
And when he goes to see Trump next week, one of the first things Trump will say to him is, all very well, doubtless talking like this, but you've got to up your spending commitment, and Keir Starmer's been under a lot of pressure to timetable. He said that we will lift it from 2.3% of GDP, national income, to 2.5%, but he hasn't said when. Now, I mean, and there's going to be real pressure on him to put a time on that now.
Yeah, there really, really is. So that is a test of strength. He will face Trump in Washington talks next week, my understanding is for that. So the Times for Tuesday: Ukraine needs US safety pledges, PM to tell Trump. There is Keir Starmer and President Macron becoming, I'll tell you what, when you've got a common enemy, it doesn't have to make you friends, doesn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
They seem to be holding hands.
They're holding hands. They're clasping each other's hands very closely. I did see a caption on social media today referring to it as it's like when your Uncle Keith marries his best friend. They actually almost look like a couple. They do look. They are. Yeah, they're like holding each other's hands very tightly.
Could be at a lovely gay wedding, but yeah, my enemy's enemy is my friend, isn't it? That's the way that goes. Everyday goals help dementia patients live at home for longer. This is the NHS should help dementia patients stick to daily goals such as getting dressed or making tea to keep them out of hospital. This is a trial has discovered this. Is this just another way, though, of not taking care of people who need to be taken care of?
Well, possibly, but most studies do seem to say that you are better off at home and doing everyday tasks is much better if you've got dementia. And that sort of ties in with really the amount of patients in hospital who are bed blocking, they can't get out because they haven't got a care plan, and then when they get out they find that they need physiotherapy because they've been in bed so long, their muscles have wasted and withered. So most arguments, and certainly in terms of saving money, it is better if most patients with treatable conditions are at home rather than in hospital. And I think we've all had relatives where we've seen them decline much quicker when they go into an institution than when they stay at home, do stuff they're familiar with, maybe go for a walk, be with a cat, be with a dog, be with their relatives. And this study from the Lancet Healthy Longevity journal saying that those people who were looked after at home by their husband, partner or family member did do much better than those that were in hospitals and the like.
It's such a huge commitment, though, if you think about all those millions and millions of unpaid carers that are saving this country billions of pounds in care costs. And you know, they have a really tough job and they need more support.
They do.
So if this is going to happen, this has to happen by supporting those loved ones who stay at home and care for them.
Again, but huge pressures on budget. I mean, the Times talks about 982,000 people in the UK have dementia, and nearly 2/3 of them live at home. So presumably with somebody looking after them
who
and
don't
not getting
get the
paid.
support. And they don't get the support. They don't get respite. They don't get, you know, all of those things. My heart absolutely breaks for them. I often talk to those people who stay at home and look after their loved ones in phone-ins. My heart breaks for them because they want to be there for their partner or their loved one, but they are exhausted and they're not respected and they're not considered and they're not supported, and people go, oh, they're just staying at home. I mean, you know, younger people as well in their 30s and 40s having to give up work and then being accused of being, you know, shirkers because they're staying at home looking after their mum.
And it's a 7-day-a-week, 24 hours a day job, not like some 9 to 5 like most people do. So it's a tremendously difficult, trying job, and is saving billions and billions and billions. And we just talked about the pressure. People want more money for defence, more money for healthcare, more money for education, and I'm afraid when it comes to social care and looking after sick and elderly relatives, that we would all like to get more, but they're not. They have never been, and they're unlikely to be a government priority.
Because
they
can't unionise. They can't gather. These carers are so exhausted. They're so separate. They're so isolated, actually, as well. That's what I hear all the time. Is I don't even know my neighbours. I haven't got time. I don't talk to anybody. I don't see. So they're isolated. So they've got no voice. They've got not one big, strong voice speaking for them.
It's just the charity sector, and that's already overburdened, and people are giving less and less to charity because they haven't got any money.
I know. It is absolutely heartbreaking to hear the voices of these fabulous men and women who take care of their loved ones. It really is awe-inspiring. Right, Vincent and I are going to take a quick break, but we will be back.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, great to have your company, and with me is Vincent Moss, and we are going through Tuesday's newspapers, Daily Mail now, shall we? Kemi, it's time to get off our knees and start fighting for Western values. What does she mean by this?
Well, she's having another go at what she calls the poisonous woke ideology and the left's useful idiots, and she's saying that it's up to people like her to stand up for the fabric of Western civilization. It must be defended. And it's an attack, really, the very deliberate reference to getting off our knees, and that's a dig very much at Prime Minister Keir Starmer, who famously took the knee, I think, along with Angela Rayner, to support the Black Lives Matters protest in 2020. So she's having a dig at him. But it does come at a time when there are lots of questions being asked in the Conservative Party about whether it's time for them to be changing their leaders. So she shares that with Keir Starmer. They're both under pressure, and she's going to what she knows works for her base, which is this attack on what she sees as woke ideology. But I'm not sure, with all the things that are going on in the world at the moment, that is potentially the best place for her to be. But she's under huge pressure at the moment, because there's a lot of unhappiness about her as leader.
There's been a poll done that I saw on a news organisation today. It's all I watch, suggesting that no one knows what the Tories stand for, and people know what Reform stands for, right? But they don't know what the Tories actually stand for. And I think that is at the root of the major issues with the polling, because, you know, typical of Nigel Farage, he has a very simple statement. He has a very simple direction. It's like MAGA, right? The cult that is MAGA. It is one message. And as we've heard, those people didn't even hear Donald Trump saying, I'm going to take your job, I'm going to take your subsidies, even though he said that. But it's a simple message, and Reform have got that. They've got a straightforward, simple message. Not that people have to be simple to believe it, but it is a simple message. Tony Blair had it. Tony Blair was the first person to use simple messaging in the 1997 election. He had one message. He made sure all his ministers, everybody that was in front of a camera, had the same message. It was the first time that it was used, and look how successful it was. So if you stick with one message, it is much more simple for people to grasp, for all of us to grasp. What are the Tories?
Well, exactly.
I mean, who are they?
They've got a huge problem, because even going after the woke, go broke agenda, Nigel Farage and Reform have kind of cornered that market,
They've
really.
got it, yeah.
And when it comes to attacking the government, well, you'd have to say, what would you do differently? The Conservatives had a time in government. They didn't solve the small boats problem. There's now attacking Labour, who haven't solved the small boats problem either. No surprise. I suspect Reform wouldn't solve it either. It's a very hard problem to solve. It's probably going to take years. But it's a problematic time, because we're coming up to local elections, and people will be expecting the Conservative Party a bit of a revival. They've got huge cash flow problems. They've lost a lot of money in donations. They're having to make staff cuts at Conservative Central Office. So it's a difficult time for them, and it's difficult to get airtime at the moment. There's so much else going on, and the people getting airtime on the right of the argument tend to be Reform.
Yeah, they absolutely do. Do you know what, as well, is I just hate this term woke, and it's like what happens to silence people. You just take it to its ridiculous degree and then take the mick out of it. I mean, woke used to mean having empathy or consideration for other people, and you know, I get accused of being woke when I talk about, you know, like the carers, or, you know, not all disabled people are faking it. Oh, you're just woke.
This is the thing. It's become a lazy...
It's become a lazy argument for anybody who has anything nice to say about anybody else.
Yeah. And if people don't like your idea, it's woke.
Oh, it's woke.
I don't like that, it's woke. It's woke. And it's just become a sort of a way that people on the right of the argument are just... Exactly. If you don't like something, say why you don't like it. Don't just say it's woke.
Don't just say it's woke. Yeah. It's a way of silencing people who have empathy and concern for, you know, immigrants or whatever, and they go, oh, you're just being woke. Have them live in your house then. It's like, that is just not an argument, right? It's just pathetic. But anyway.
Maybe I should say that to the dog. Every time he doesn't do something, I won't go out for a walk. Oh, you're just being woke. You won't go for a walk. So you just say,
Exactly.
it just becomes a term of abuse, doesn't it?
Yeah, it just becomes
does.
abusive. Exactly that. Right. The Daily Express, 3 out of 4 OAPs living in cold homes. It's probably woke to mention this, but I do have concern. Up to 9 million pensioners were left shivering at home last month after Labour cut their winter fuel payments. We knew this was going to happen. 3 in 4 lived in uncomfortably cold homes in January. Charity Aid UK will today deliver a petition with 650,000 signatures to Downing Street demanding action to make sure it can never happen again.
Well, I mean, they've already cut the winter fuel payments, so I'm not sure what the petition is going to do. It's a huge number of people, and Age UK do some fantastic work, but there's a lot of pressure on the government to U-turn on lots of things, and one of the things it doesn't look like it's going to U-turn on, not least because the winter's over, effectively, or it will be fairly soon, is the winter fuel payment. So I'm afraid that cut, much as many people would like to see it reversed, probably is not going to be reversed.
Well, I just hope that all those pensioners who have had that cut now manage to get pension credits and then get it returned to them for next winter, because the amount of pensioners that are having to go onto pension credit that wouldn't have done before is going to cost us more than that blooming winter fuel would have cost in the first place. Yeah. Unbelievable, but probably woke. No, it's not woke. Right, very quickly, the Telegraph. Germany rejects PM's Ukraine peace deal, but it's not peace plan. He hasn't exactly rejected it, has it? He said that it's too early to be talking about it, really. So
yes,
we can't.
Sounds reasonable, actually.
Yeah, I agree. Gen Z wastes food over best before date fit. Oh my God, my son, who is a Gen Z, I think. He used to be like, oh no, Mum, this is out of date. And I go, it's yogurt. It's not out of date. It's fine. No, I'm not eating that. He honestly, and so I used to, with bacon and things like that, he used to say, Mum, this is out of date. And I go, no, I got it out of the freezer earlier.
I remember talking to a nurse about this, and she said, you can eat yogurt well beyond it. So, obviously, if you're frail, or maybe if you're pregnant or something, but she said, yogurt is fine. You can eat that.
A culture of
so I'm
bacteria.
now pushing it how far I can do it beyond that, and I'm up to a week, and it's definitely fine.
It's definitely
a week
fine
afterwards.
So far.
I think the only things I wouldn't do are probably fresh fish and a few things like that.
No, but you can tell. Your nose is the best way of telling you if something is off or not. And
vegetables would easily, sometimes even 2 weeks past the sell-by date.
Definitely, I'd chop them up and put them in a stew or whatever.
Always some use for them.
Yeah. Gen Z and millennials are the least likely to rely on the sniff test and instead throw food away if it's out of date. Ugh.
I don't know how they can afford to do it. No wonder they can't get on the housing ladder if they're throwing their avocados away before they've even eaten them. That's the trouble with Gen Z.
That is the problem with Gen Z. But occasionally I do buy avocados, thinking I'm going to eat that, and then I don't, and it just goes in the bin. I'm going to start doing a compost, actually. But yeah, Gen Z wasting food. Starmer, this is The Guardian. US backstop vital to deter future Russian attacks on Ukraine. It just depends really how available Donald Trump is to that suggestion when he sees him in Washington.
Yeah. Be interesting to see how both sides spin that. I suspect we might hear two rather different stories, but Guardian talks about that even if there was a 30,000 strong European force deployed from the front line,
it would need big front line.
That would be huge, and that would still need protections, including air cover and logistics that only NATO, specifically the US, can provide, says The Guardian.
I mean, the easiest way to do this, the cheapest, easiest and quickest way is to give Ukraine NATO membership.
Yes, yeah. But that would infuriate Putin, obviously.
Yeah. But Finland got it. Everybody else has done that. You know, what did he do about that? Nothing.
Yeah.
And he said, well, I'm not having that. And it happened, and he kept quiet about it. So, but the only reason he doesn't want Ukraine to have NATO, to be in NATO, is because that means he won't be able to attack it.
Yeah.
So let's think about why he doesn't want it, shall we?
Exactly.
Seems fairly obvious to me. Right, we're going to take a very quick break, but we will be back in just a moment.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, good to have you with us. It's Petrie and it's Vincent Moss as well, and we are going through Tuesday's front pages. And we've got to look at the Daily Star now. I love a bit of Daily Star, it always cheers me up. I love this one. It says MPs are lazy gits. That's just on the sidebar there. And vegan party over as Gen Z going bonkers for bangers, apparently. It is the age of the sausage.
Well, apparently, you might imagine they're all, as it says in the Star, sandal-wearing vegetarians, but they're not. Apparently, they do like sausages and they're eating more meat again. I do feel sorry for Gen Zers because they keep getting a pasting in virtually all of the papers, don't they?
It's all their fault.
It's all their fault. But because they're so Gen Zs, I'm sure they probably don't buy newspapers, so luckily they won't know about any of this.
They won't even know about it.
But there's a big picture of a Gen Zer eating a sausage, surrounded for reasons I can't quite understand by seagulls. So
I think the Star's quite fond of seagulls,
yes.
or their, how violent seagulls are. I think that's what they love the most. But they've been at it with the Pritt stick and their images. But you've got to thank them for just trying to just brighten the day.
Exactly, a little bit of light when there's so much grim news on the rest of the front pages.
Oh, what about this for a thought of the day? Only deviants put ketchup in a sausage sandwich.
No, I think that's not. I think lots of people do.
Bacon sandwich or sausage sandwich, I will put brown sauce and red sauce. That probably is.
That answers the perennial question, doesn't it? Which is red sauce or brown sauce? Both. I don't know people who do. I didn't know anybody who does both.
No, you do both.
I do red. I've never done brown.
You've got to try it with a bit
We'll try it with both.
Try it because it gives a little bit of extra spice to it, definitely. Mind you, I haven't had a bacon or sausage sandwich for months. It's made me hungry now. The Financial Times, Zelensky will not recognise talks with Moscow that exclude Ukraine. I mean, seriously, did they think that they would? It's bonkers.
Exactly, and he was always bound to say that, and they would put a deal to him, no doubt, and he'll reject it. So and so he should. I mean, it's for a very brave man, it's quite a humiliating position to be
really
in, where people are just going over his head and not including him in these talks.
It's belittling, isn't it? It's like saying you don't matter, you don't count. It's horrible. Trump presses Romania to lift travel ban on Andrew Tate. Why? I mean, this is bonkers, right? I mean, what's it got to do with Trump? This horrible, self-described misogynist influencer. He's a champion of the US president and he's facing criminal charges in Bucharest. So is he going to give him refugee status in America?
Well, that's the key, is they're big supporter. He's been a big supporter of Trump, but there seems to be an awful lot of, obviously, nothing's been they've not been convicted yet, and would doubtless claim they're innocent, but there seems to be an awful lot of very serious charges against the two brothers.
Yeah, very serious.
And if they were allowed to travel, which I can't imagine that they would be allowed to travel, although the FT does point out they're dual US and UK nationals, if they did get over to the States by some ruse or other, then I would imagine it would be quite difficult for the Romanians to extradite them and get them back. So, very, very strange story, and it'd be interesting. It doesn't say. I'm not sure it says exactly who in the Trump administration is pressing for this, but obviously I would imagine that the Romanians and anybody sensible would want to stop that from happening.
Yeah, absolutely. But interesting. Maybe Donald Trump will give Andrew Tate a job, like head of female affairs or something.
Yeah.
I mean, who knows these days? It could be anything.
Exactly.
But extraordinary story. I mean, why would he get? I mean, Trump has got to realise he's not God, right? He's not the king of the world, is he? Or has that happened while I was asleep and no one told me?
I think he might think it's happened.
Yeah.
So it's just amazing. He's got time to meddle in so many different parts of the world and things that don't really concern him. I mean, so I would hope there's not much to that story, but it's got 3 different bylines on it, so the FT's obviously put quite a lot of work into it. Must believe it.
Yeah, must be. The Metro. The Storm offensive. PM embarks on a mission to seize a once-in-a-generation moment for thwarting Russia. This is, again, Keir Starmer's trying to be a bridge, he said, didn't he? A bridge between between Europe, as opposed to the EU, but Europe and America in their talks over Ukraine.
Yeah, and it sounds good in theory, being
but
a bridge.
Is he strong enough?
Well, also, we know that Trump is very pointedly not using bridges. He's not even going to...
He's blowing them up.
Yes, exactly. He's not even going to Zelensky. So I don't see why he would listen to Keir Starmer or Macron or anybody else. He just sees himself as somebody that only deals with the principles, as it were. So he's going to go and deal with the person at the heart of this, which is Putin. So,
who he admires, as we know, and he admires those dictators. He even said, there was a quote of him going, "Oh, there's something in that." Being a dictator, and it looks like he's going to push America towards that kind of leadership. If everything is to be believed, what's going on in America at the moment, and I tend to think it is going that way. But yeah, I wonder if Keir Starmer is sort of over imagining himself to be more important to America than he is.
Well, he's trying to insert himself into what's going on, but yeah, I think it's pretty clear. I think, you know, when he probably goes to bed at night, I don't think he does think he's brokering world peace, but he is about to go to the White House, and he's got to say something that doesn't make him look as though he's an extra in all of this.
But it's interesting because so far Britain has been very quiet about what America is doing. Has been very quiet about that salute by Elon Musk, which I was shocked that we were silent on that. You know, given our history and given the history of Europe, and people will go, yeah, but America were part of it as well, but they were so far away from it, they didn't live it. That was so offensive to so many people. And we kept quiet on that. We've kept quiet on, you know, the things about the Gaza, except that, no, well, we believe in a two-state solution. I was glad that Keir Starmer came up with that. But, you know, Trump has got, I don't know what he's playing at, but certainly with Gaza, the Arab nations got together today and put out a statement with the PM of Gaza saying, we're not moving the Gazan people. They're not going anywhere. And so this is the Arab nations got together and said, no, we can rebuild this area. We can rebuild the Gaza Strip, and we will do it with our own people. So Donald Trump's going to hear what he doesn't want to hear, and that is, you can't have Gaza.
No, exactly. I think one of the reasons that the UK is so quiet at the moment is we're petrified that we'll get imposed and slapped with some kind of tariff. So we seem to be operating our own sort of strategy of appeasement with the American president, because we're frightened about what it might mean for us economically at a time when we're economically pretty weak in terms of growth.
If you know, Donald Trump bullying the rest of the world into agreeing with his outrageous statements on countries like Gaza, Greenland and Canada and the Panama Canal, that's not right.
No.
I mean, we used to be a country that would say, look, I'm sorry, mate, but that's not good. What you're saying is not good. It's not nice. Burning bridges with all your allies is not a clever thing to do, and we wouldn't support you in that.
No, we're definitely a lot quieter. A lot of UK politicians, including the Foreign Secretary David Lammy, were very critical of him before the election. So I think there's now kind of a little bit of a vow of silence.
Appeasement.
When it comes, when it comes to being mean about him.
Keir Starmer's trying to ride both horses, and you can't do that.
No.
I mean, I used to ride horses as a girl. You can't ride two at the same time. You can't be you know, America and Europe. I mean, and this is what he's trying to do. He's trying not to upset anybody, and by doing that, you become weak. You look weak. So, yeah. The Sun newspaper, do the wokey cokey. 8 billion research cash used for trans-friendly robots, queer animals and TikTok dance. Taxpayers are funding a university study of TikTok dance videos in the latest government waste outrage. More than 8 billion in public cash was set aside for research, but millions have been splurged on woke projects looking at queer animals. So there was 8 billion research, and of that, some of it was used
It'll be only a small amount, I imagine.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't understand what the problem is with trans-friendly robots. I mean, if you're going to have a robot, you're going to have to make sure it doesn't hate anybody, aren't you?
You'd hope not. Well, it could be problematic if it did take. We saw what happened in RoboCop when it started hating people. So you do want robots that obey people. Like the Sun at the moment.
This is bait, isn't it? This is just clickbait.
The Sun's got a big crusade on government waste, or war on woke, as it calls it. It's following from the Elon Musk stuff in America, the Department of Government Efficiency, and doubtless there are an awful lot of projects potentially that, if you don't examine them properly, look like they're waste. Some of them might be genuine waste. Some of them should be cut. But again, this government's only been in for 6 months, and when you look into these projects, most of them have been running for many years, or several years at least, and started under the last administration. So yes, I think it's good that people are putting a microscope on every area of government spending, and the government should be doing that, and people should have to justify why they're doing it. And there's a lot of criticism of the 15 billion we spend in overseas aid. I think some of that probably is waste, some of it is probably well spent, and somebody should be going through it, as I'm sure hopefully the government are, working out what's waste and what's not. But what the Sun is doing, as newspapers often do, is picking out the ones that sound the dodgiest and the weirdest. I think they had one on the front page yesterday about prawns, money going to prawns or shrimps or something in another part of the world. Sounds a bit weird, probably is a bit weird, should be cut maybe, and that's their big crusade at the moment. It's this war on woke, as they call it. Yeah,
it's millions have been splurged on woke projects looking at queer animals and pro-trans robots. Again, you know, maybe there is some value to looking to. We know that there are gay animals, right? We know that in the animal kingdom that there is homosexuality. We know that. It's not even a question. So maybe they're just looking into, you know, how those animals have survived, because it's survival of the fittest, isn't it? Survival of, I don't know.
Yeah, you'd want to see all the details, but again, there's some waste, but it is.
It's just these headlines, and you see this on the Mail Online. It says this most outrageous thing, and then you click on it, which is all they wanted. That's all they want. You've done your job now, and you start reading the article and you go, oh, it's got nothing to do with it.
Exactly.
It's nothing to do with what I thought it was.
But that's the economics of newspapers now. It's not it's not the money they get at the newsstand, it's the clicks they get online that fund the newspapers.
Yeah, exactly that. I suppose it is the case, and that'll enrage people.
It will.
In the papers tomorrow. Britain braced for more cuts. This is the Eye, to boost this defence spending. And this is the question, isn't it? We started off the hour talking about that, that it's going to be expensive to defend ourselves.
Yeah, it is. Even the smallest rise, as we said before, would be £5 billion at a time when we haven't got any money. And if you want to spend more on the military, you're going to have to take the money away from somewhere else or put taxes up. And pretty much all cuts are really unpopular. There's one of the biggest areas is pensions. Well, you know, we've already seen the fuss over the winter fuel payments. Is this government going to take an axe to, for example, the triple lock on pensions? Probably not. So that's not a saving. Very hard to see where the money comes from. And this government is under huge pressures to find money on all the top of everything else. Now defence cuts. And by the way, this is a day when it thought it'd be talking about hitting its target on cutting hospital waiting numbers.
Bad at making the headlines, aren't they?
And virtually no coverage at all about it.
No front page anyway has covered they've hit their target on the extra 2 million appointments. But yeah, I mean their timing is so bad. With almost every announcement they've ever tried to make, they've never made front page with it. They've got to get rid of their comms people.
Well, they probably thought it'd be a quiet Monday and they didn't realise what was going to be happening, and they had that all in their grid ready to go, and they thought it'd be a good news story about health cutting waiting lists, and had Wes Streeting lined up to talk about it. But then the world wants to talk about other things, and that's one of the problems with
planning. It never goes well. Vincent, thank you very much indeed for coming in. Vincent Moss there, going through Tuesday's newspapers. Thank you. Right, coming up between you and me now, we are going to be talking about these cuts to boost defence spending over the Ukraine crisis. And what are you prepared to stomach in order to better defend this country? Look, it seems we can no longer rely on the United States of America to help us keep peace on this side of the Atlantic. And he's probably right. Maybe it is time that we stood on our own 2 feet. But in order to do that, we are going to have to spend some money. How do we do that? Well, there's only a few choices, but you can bet your bottom dollar it'll end up costing each and every single one of us. So, do you think we just give up on defence and just go, right, I'll just get out my Russian phrase book, it'll be fine? Or do we spend more money? Give me a call, 0344 499 1000.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, good morning. It is Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock. And this is your hour. It is entirely yours. There are no guests. There's nothing else here. It's just you and me talking, and no other show gives you that space. So this is your space, and I want you to use it. And whether we agree or disagree, we can have grown-up conversations. That's what I love about this programme. So please do join in the conversation. What we're going to be talking about is what's happening with Russia and Ukraine and the United States and NATO and Europe's defence. And it does seem that America is now, under Trump, and we knew he would, right, it's no shock, has told us we need to be more self-sufficient when it comes to defending our corner of the world. And I agree with him. I've never liked being in anybody's pocket. It doesn't suit me. I don't like being beholden to anybody. I'd rather be independent, and I've arranged my life so that I am. And I think that there's a good deal to be said for being independent. It means you don't have to go cap in hand to the United States, particularly when it's under Biden, who wasn't particularly fond of us, or now Donald Trump, who doesn't barely really consider us. We need to be more self-sufficient when it comes to defence, and we need to defend peace from a power of strength. I've always believed that, which is why we have nuclear deterrence, right? If you support them, then you support the ideal that I'm making, and that is we need to be a defensive, not attacking force, so that we defend from a position of strength, so that we don't have to go to war. And a lot of people go, what do we need? Why do we need an army then? Well, we need it when we need it. And it seems like an oxymoron to say that we needed to build our defence forces so that we never need to use them. But unfortunately, there will always be a need to use them somewhere in the world, even if we come to somebody else's aid. And that's what it is, being part of a global, I don't even want to say family because it sounds a bit weak, but that's the world, right? We're all human beings on this planet, although you may choose to other people. I choose not to. I choose to see human beings as valuable as each other, and that but for the grace of our birth we may be in that situation ourselves, or there but for the grace of our politics we may one day find ourselves in that situation in this country. Ask Americans at the moment how they're feeling about what's happening in their country, and how many of them are living under fear of what they see as a massive regime change. So we're only ever an election away, really. Ask Germany as well. They've got their elections on Thursday, where the far-right party, the AfD, are rising. They're unlikely, they think, to win this election. I mean, a far-right party in Germany, where that awful man happened. I mean, I can't believe we haven't learned anything from history, and that nastiness and meanness is at the heart of all human beings. I don't want to believe that. But look, if we are to stand on our own 2 feet, we're going to have to spend more money. How do we do that when we haven't got any money? And a lot of you go, well, we haven't got the money, so we can't build our defences, which leaves us weak and vulnerable. So we are in a tricky position. I think that we are in a very dangerous position, actually, depending on what happens with Ukraine and Russia, what happens there. Is it going to be a case of a peace that can be held? Is it going to be appeasement, which doesn't work, historically doesn't work? Is it going to be something that Ukraine can sign up to? Is it something that we can help with keeping the peace there and holding Russia back? Is it something that NATO membership could deal with? Or are we just going to go, well, it's between those two? But it isn't, is it? We know it isn't. Look, Keir Starmer has been talking, and he has said that he's committed to placing British forces in Ukraine. Let's have a listen now to a clip. Keir Starmer committed to placing British forces in Ukraine. Do we have that? All right, we'll get to that in just a moment. So this is the other question I have for you: is if we do send troops to, I don't know whichever bit of land it will be, because there'd have to be a buffer zone, right? There'd have to be a green zone in between the two countries. So would it be Ukrainian soil? Would it be old Ukrainian soil, new Ukrainian soil, Russian soil? Where would this buffer zone fall? And we would essentially be there to defend that line. Do you support that? Let's have a listen to what Keir Starmer said.
Europe must play its role, and I'm prepared to consider committing British forces on the ground alongside others if there is a lasting peace agreement. But there must be a US backstop, because a US security guarantee is the only way to effectively deter Russia from attacking Ukraine again.
So that's Keir Starmer there. He then went on to say that it's not just the future of Ukraine that's at stake.
I've been clear today, Britain will take a leading responsibility, as we always have, because Ukraine must have a secure future, Europe must have a secure future, Britain must have a secure future, and democratic values must prevail.
And America, the US, has already said, which is really bizarre to do this before any peace talks, but has already said that Russia will keep the land that it's got and the Ukraine will not join NATO. I mean, that's taken most of what Ukraine would want off the table, hasn't it? So in terms of peace talks, this is appeasement. This is giving Russia everything that they want, and Ukraine nothing. So how can that peace be held? I don't understand it. Give me a call. Let me know what you think, because I want to know what you're prepared that might be cut in order for us to fund not the defence of Ukraine, but the defence of us and Europe. 0344 499 1000. Let's go to Simon, who's in Sevenoaks. Simon, good morning to you.
Good morning, Petrie. And before we start, can I thank you for the assistance you gave me when the DWP tried to evict me from my house because they didn't believe my son was disabled. And I spoke to you on a previous call about 6 months ago. And I fought the DWP. They relented, and just last week they paid up my rent.
Oh, I'm so pleased. Brilliant. See,
I don't know whether it was your influence or whether, because I did mention your name, but...
They don't like it when you mention people like me.
Well, I've known your name for the best part of 30 years because you used to be a presenter on BFBS when I was a serving soldier.
That's right. Yeah, I was many years ago. Which is why when people say to me, or they leave messages going, "What do you know about the military? What do you know about defence?"
You live with us for day in, day out.
I know. 9 years.
I mean, I was a military policeman, but we all knew Petrie Hosken because you used to broadcast our road traffic reports when we said it's bloody icy down there.
Yeah.
We didn't know whether it was icy or not. We didn't go down there. It was too bloody cold. We sat in the police station.
Yeah, it was, soldiers of a certain age all knew the name Petrie Hosken. It's also an unusual name, but I had a great time with you guys.
Have you got any German in you?
No.
So how come you got a German first name then?
Well, do you know what? My dad, who's a Cornishman, chose the name, and if it wasn't going to be Petrie, it was going to be Lordana. So you could be listening to Lordana Hosken, which is awful. But no, he was a reporter in Cornwall, and he did a story about this really brave little girl called Petrie, and that's how I got the name.
Well, can you say we're lucky? Because my grandmother was Jewish, and if I'd have been a girl, I'd have been called Rishenda, because that was the Jewish name that stood out. My dad turned around in later life and said, "Yeah, but we'd have called you Ricky." I said, "But it's a boy's name, Dad."
Yeah, no, really? Rishenda and Lordana, we would have been a right pair, wouldn't we?
Wouldn't we just?
What a nightmare. Anyway, Simon, as a former soldier, what do you make of, first of all, the appeasement that appears to be going on with Russia, giving him everything he wants?
I don't really think it's appeasement as such. At the end of the day, this is a war of attrition. Many thousands of people are dying daily, weekly, or whether, I don't know the figures, but it's like equivalent to the First World War, isn't it? And to be quite honest, the bloodshed needs to end.
Yeah, it does.
So how do we get to a situation where this bloodshed ends? There has to be a deal. Every war ends in a negotiation.
But you don't normally negotiate with the aggressor, right?
Well, you do if the aggressor has got the upper hand. He holds the vast swathe of Ukrainian territory, and all right, yeah, I know Russia's suffering now, and the Ukraine can push them back, but how do you end the bloodshed?
I don't. But we've tried appeasement before.
With Hitler, and
that didn't go well, did it?
Yeah, went a bit tits up. Didn't
it did go a bit
tits up. That's why me and you ended up in Germany, love.
Yeah, exactly. Why I was there. But you know, it's just to me that without Zelensky agreeing to a peace deal. How, or at least having a part of it, how can it be?
No, absolutely, Zelensky and the Ukrainian people must agree to it. But people are castigating Donald Trump. He wants to end this war. Now, I mean, Russia are the aggressor, so you need to know what the aggressor wants. So he's speaking to Russia first, before he goes back to Zelensky, and he said he wants this. What's your counter offer?
Yeah, I hope that is.
He's the deal maker,
case,
isn't he? He's a businessman. He's not a military strategist or anything like that, is he?
No.
But I think that's what he's looking at. And if it's untenable, I'm hoping that he's man enough to turn around and say, no, that's not acceptable.
I mean, because I don't know how you can keep a peace. I mean, I think of Cyprus, which I went out to a few times as well when I was working.
1974, yeah. My former CO, he got a Queen's Gallantry Medal.
Did he?
Evacuating Turkish
people,
diplomats.
Yeah.
When the Turks invaded and they were shooting up their own people.
Yeah.
But
you've got a buffer zone there, right? I mean, you look at where peace is held well, right? You both agree, and you have a buffer zone, and this is a big border between Ukraine and Russia.
It's 1,600 miles long.
Yeah, how are they going to?
The thing is, it's a buffer zone. And what are you going to do? You're going to put 10,000 British troops. You could put 70,000, the entirety of the British Army, on that border, and they would be insufficient to prevent an incursion.
Exactly.
Either way. I mean, and the thing is, part of the reason why Vladimir Putin invaded Ukraine was to keep the EU and NATO out of Ukraine. Is he going to accept NATO troops as impartial peacemakers? They must be non-aligned troops, surely. They'll have to be South Americans, Indians, Asians. But they won't be any Europeans there because they're all part of NATO.
No, it's a very good point. It's a very good point that there's no point because he wouldn't trust them because although you can say, well, this isn't part of NATO, they would be troops that come from countries that are in NATO. They can
swap their blueberry for a NATO berry, as we did in Yugoslavia.
Yeah. Well, it wouldn't be even under the United Nations.
Part of the NATO Peace Implementation Force. I was in the UN before that. One day I went from being UN to being NATO. I was still the same soldier. We still had the same force on the ground. The next thing that happened is that we had Challenger 1 tanks rolled up into Yugoslavia, and the Serbs said, OK, we hold our hands up, we can't fight that. But we're talking about Russia now.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, in 1985-86, I went through basic training. I was trained to fight the Warsaw Pact. You know, the gap in Germany, which is where the Soviets would advance through Western Europe. And it was on the border. It was on the border between us and the US forces, you know, so they get us from the north, the Yanks from the south. But the fact of the matter is, it's not that circumstance anymore.
No, we're in a completely different world, and I don't believe it's a world where Vladimir Putin has finished.
I don't think he's finished either. And so what's he going to do? Is he going to draw the entirety of the British Army in Ukraine to be a peace force, and then he's going to go into the Baltic states? Or
well, I mean, there's some
Poland or whatever.
Or it'd be Estonia, I think.
Is he going to be like the general deployment plan? I used to work in HQ 1BR Corps. We had four divisions, 3 armoured, 1 infantry, to defend the northern part of Germany. And even with 800 main battle tanks, 55,000 troops, we had an estimated length of survival of 5 days before we'd have to resort to battlefield nuclear weapons to halt their advance. And is he thinking we won't use the nukes? Because
I don't know. I mean, this is the thing.
Nukes anymore.
Is that we wouldn't be able to sustain any kind of peace without.
We can't sustain an armoured division anymore because all of our mob stores of armaments have been gifted to Ukraine.
All the old
stuff.
stuff.
We have no reserves of artillery rounds, ammunition. The weapons we've supplied to Ukraine, we've gutted everything.
So we do need to rebuild.
We need to rebuild. We need to increase defence spending to 5% of GDP, I would say.
Easily. That'd be about 100 billion. It'd be equal then to, well, it would be half the price of the NHS, but it would be about 100 billion.
Well, it's not the point, but it's 2,000% of the NHS, because without an armed forces to defend our country from aggressors, what's the point of having an NHS?
I agree. I mean, I totally agree. But a lot of people think, oh, that's just warmongering, and I'm not. It's peace from the point of strength.
Sun Tzu, yeah, famous Chinese philosopher. If you want peace, prepare for war.
Absolutely, and that keeps the baddies at bay, because then they go, oh, well, perhaps I won't do that.
Oh, I'm not going to take them on.
Yeah, exactly.
And all the messages coming out of this lip-wristed Labour government, same as the Tories, both of them are inept. You know, the Chinese, the Russians, the North Koreans, they respond to strength only.
Exactly.
They see us as weak.
Yeah, they do, and so does Trump
from Afghanistan.
Yeah.
It just proves that.
Oh my God, that was the biggest indicator to all those countries that you just mentioned were having a party that day, just going, yeah, look how useless they were. Yeah, no, listen, it comes no surprise to you, Simon, but I completely agree with you. I'm
Petrie,
really.
You are a wonderful person and a fabulous host, and I will always love you to my dying day.
Bless your heart. I can't ask for more than that, can I? Simon, thank you, and I'm really thrilled that you managed to get things sorted out with yourself and your boy. I'm going to take a quick break, but I will be back. We've got loads of calls.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hi there, good morning. Well, the Prime Minister Keir Starmer joined European leaders in Paris today for an emergency summit on the future of Ukraine, but not just the future of Ukraine, but the future of Europe and the future of the UK. And I'm saying Europe as a collection of individual countries, not the EU. You know, it works differently with defence, and each country is coming forward now. It's not a unilateral EU decision, for example, although other people would have you believe that it is the EU and they can't make a decision. It's not that, right? This is separate from the economic trading bloc. This is about defence, and each country has its own military, each country of various sizes, and each country will decide unilaterally, not unilaterally, individually, what they're prepared to do with those armed services. And there will be no EU in it. So I just wanted to make that clear. Message here from Ali says, we need at least another 100,000 troops in the army if we're going to look after ourselves and the rest of Europe. We need to spend 5% or more. And that's from Ali. And that is true. That is exactly where we are with this, because America has decided, for whatever reason, that it no longer wishes to be our army, if you like. And I think that you'll hear me say this very rarely, but I think Donald Trump is right to suggest that we need to spend our own money in defending this part of the world. I think he's right. And I think that we've been kowtowing to America for long enough, and that we need to have our own defence spending and our own defence so that we don't have to put up with some of the stuff that is going to be coming down the track from the US of A. So it's good to be independent, right? It's good not to have to, agree with somebody just for the sake of being protected, So I think it is the right thing to do. But we're pushed for money, aren't we? And we're going to have to... Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves have already argued about this, apparently. And he's told her that we need to up defence spending, and she needs to find the money. So it could be that we have to have cutbacks in order to defend ourselves. But I don't think there's any question that we need to be prepared, right? But by how much? And how much of the burden should we take? We are a nuclear power, so it would put us at the head or the lead of any decisions, I guess. I don't think there'll be any European army as long as I've been around the military, which, as you heard from Simon there, was at least 30 years ago, and they were talking about it then, a European army, and how that wouldn't happen, couldn't happen, shouldn't happen. So Zelensky wants that, but I don't think that's ever really going to happen. So how do we set about defending ourselves from the would-be aggressor that is Russia? And Russia aren't done. So how do we know how far they're prepared to go? And how far are we prepared to go in defending countries that border that area of the world? Big questions and big money. So give me a call, 0344 499 1000. Carol is in Manchester. Hello, Carol. How are you?
Hello again.
Hello. No, it's lovely to talk to you.
You're having a good evening.
Yeah, well, all right,
Absolutely, honestly, on this one, absolutely. Do you support cuts or higher tax for defence? Of course, we have to do that for our country. Of course we have to do that. But by God, with what's going on at the moment, this particular war at the moment is between certain countries that are going on. And I know Trump is getting involved, with it. I'm glad that somebody's getting involved with it. We don't want this war keep going on and going on and going on. But there's no way on this earth that any of our troops should go over there. No chance. This is too early days at the moment. It's very, very too early days that's going on. And the war is awful. Like Simon said, I listened to that intelligent man who spoke before me. And honest to God, I thought he was very intelligent of what he said. We don't need it blowing up. We don't need it going on or whatever. These people in these countries, right, which is to do with Russia, to do with America, to do with Europe or whatever, they need to have a scrap with each other. Let them sort themselves out. But we do not need, I cannot believe that our Prime Minister wants to take our troops over. What do you mean, peace? Peace? They've not even sorted the beginnings of this war. It doesn't matter how we feel from country to country to European people. I mean, I know with the grace of God, yeah, we are European, but we're not in the European thing. And the thing is that a lot of these, I mean, Germany, how much are they paying towards defence compared to, you know, they're a massive big country, you know, like, and absolutely, with Trump, he might say a lot of people, but
don't forget that Germany has been limited on what it can do defence-wise and building armies because of what happened in the Second World War.
Yeah, but I understand that. I totally.
And they've given the most money out of European countries to Ukraine.
And I do. Well, apparently Britain has more than.
No, Germany has given more.
Right.
But we're
thank
second.
You for that.
Yeah.
I'm giving with that. But I'm just saying, at the end of the day, you know, like, we need to calm it down. We really do need to calm it down. And it is, if you've got somebody coming in, you know, like, I mean, it doesn't matter what people think about Trump. You know, like, I mean, I don't like a lot of things that Trump does or anything, but he has coming in and trying to settle these wars down. You know, like, I mean, nobody knows what the ending of this discussion is. So give it a chance, see how it goes, see how it, what you calls it, you know, like, take the heat out of it. I totally agree with the leader of Ukraine as well, how he's feeling. You know, like, it must be awful the way that he's feeling or whatever. But we need to calm it down, just calm it down, because the war has to stop somewhere along the line. Somewhere along the line, because at the end of the day, people are dying. You know, like, even with the Palestinians and, you know, like, and the Jews, and somewhere along the line we have to stop it. You know, like, with it. So, and for us, we're not involved. We're living our lives. We're doing okay. We're okay.
But what about the argument, Carol, that Keir Starmer said our front line is Ukraine, because they are holding Russia back, and Russia.
Totally agree with that.
Yeah. So it kind of is our war.
It is. You can go back to the Second World War with Poland. You know, like, with it, and I understand it. But it's early days at the moment. Somebody's interfered with it, and he's a big man, a very big man, and he's coming in, you know, like, with it, you know, like, give him a chance to see what's going on. Let's just see. I understand, and I totally agree with you. There's no way with Russia. I mean, we've got the three big people there, haven't we? Russia, China and America. They're the massive big people in this world, unfortunately. You know, like, and it depends on who's leading them countries and that.
But we know that appeasement doesn't work, right? Stalin tried that with Hitler.
Yeah.
We tried that with Hitler. And appeasement makes you look weak.
Yeah.
So if Trump is going to go in, and we don't know that for sure, but the language that is being used is, Russia gets to keep the land and doesn't have to pay towards rebuilding Ukraine, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And Ukraine can't ever join NATO. That sounds like appeasement. That sounds like you're giving Russia everything.
We don't know if that is that.
Well, there was a leaked document last week, the weekend before last, that suggested exactly that.
Well, you know what Trump's like. He comes out with all these... I mean, that's the only thing about him. He comes out with these things and whatever and that, and then it's the opposite. So until that happens, you know, like, that's how we need to just be a bit calm. And we don't need to take... I mean, for God's sake, if we took our troops out of here... You talk about 10,000 troops out of this country. My God, right, we need to have our troops here. It's not enough what we've got here.
No.
You know, like...
No, but we absolutely have to stop cutting, and we have to start building again.
Exactly.
And we may not have as much time to build as we think. The point is to have it there. If you haven't got it there, it's too late. Everything is too late.
And that's why I said, we do, when you say, do you support courts or high taxes for defence? And unfortunately, defence right in this country for a long while, it doesn't matter what government it be, it's not been enough.
No way.
We need to defend our country in a lot of different ways, not just with money, with a lot of different ways. Our borders, everything. We need to literally defend them. That's all I can say.
No, listen, you don't say anything that I don't agree with you. But let me just tell you that as far as Ukraine goes, US has been given 42.7% of total government support. The EU 18.3%, Germany 6.5%, UK 5.5%, and Japan 3.9%, and other countries collectively 23%. Yeah, so Germany spends 1.5% of GDP on defence, UK spends 2.3%, and Ukraine currently spending 37%. None of those are surprising. Like I said, Germany has been limited to how much money it's allowed to spend on its own military for obvious reasons. I've got to take a quick break. Back in a sec.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning. It's Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock, and we're talking about how we should defend ourselves, build up a military that can actually defend us from aggressors, and really combining with Europe, what should our place be? Not the EU. Like I said, it is not the EU. It's European countries as individuals deciding on their military. As we said with Germany, there are restrictions on Germany because of the agreements that were made after the Second World War. So, but we need to up our spending because America, rightly, I think, has said that you've got to stand on your own 2 feet. And although they're part of NATO, and I have said this before and I will say it again, Article 5, which says that if one attack on one is attack on all, you know, that one that we all depend on, it's not a rule. It's if they want to. Trust me, if you read it, well, they can find a reason not to. So America could refuse to come to our aid even as a member of NATO, or the biggest member of NATO. So we need to be more independent, and we need to stop licking the boots of whichever president is in the US for our defence. Canada has come to the same realisation. They've realised now. Canada's gone, oh, blimey. The people we tasked with defending us might be the ones that attack us. So we need to be a little bit more independent. No bad thing. Maybe that global experiment just doesn't work. Maybe we're all starting to become little islands again, and maybe we just need to be introverted and look after ourselves. And part of that is building our defences. Because if you prepare for war and then talk peace, that's the way that it should be, from a position of strength, which is what the nuclear deterrents are all about. Pat is in London. Hi, Pat.
Oh, good evening, Petrie. About how to find the money to fund our Army, Navy and Air Force.
Yeah.
Well, that's quite easy.
Okay.
What you do, it won't happen, but what I would do, I'd call Ed Miliband into Downing Street and say, Ed, your green dream looks lovely on paper, but as a cost-effective front runner, it's a no-go. So, like Alan Sugar says, for that reason, Ed, it's with regret that you're gone, you're fired. And what's it worth? 100 billion?
It's got to be, right? I mean,
What's
look,
it
these are
worth?
the
100 billion?
choices we have to make. Yeah.
You can take that away, put it into the Army, Navy and Air Force, right? And you wouldn't have to cut the NHS, you wouldn't have to cut the councils, you wouldn't have to cut nothing else. You just, say, Ed, there's a lovely cafe down the road. Go and eat. Here's 50 quid. Go and eat as many bacon sandwiches as you want. But you're done here.
Listen, I think that look, the planet is burning, and I think that perhaps that it's too late for us to do anything about it anyway, or it, I don't know. I just think that we need to spend the money on defence.
Petrie, this country will be bankrupt, broke, in the dark and impoverished long before the planet burns.
Yeah.
And the point is, this country won't be able to afford a bleating combine harvester, let alone a bloody Challenger tank. And here's another thing. If you've got problems with recruitment, well, what you do is you make the equipment more smart, more sophisticated. So if you're looking at a destroyer or frigate that needs between 80 and 100 men to man it, well, you could do it with probably 10 to 15 men.
Yeah, in fact, the Royal Navy is looking into that, aren't they? And looking at ways to have a big boat or a big ship and not have the numbers of people on it.
If you're looking at tanks, you reduce it in size. No men. It's artificially. What you do is you have, say, people guiding it or guiding the squadron, and it has the same firepower with you might scoff at this, with electromagnetic railguns that fire a shell so powerful that it would split a tank in half, no matter what the armour. So there you've got your army.
We do need to get smarter, because the numbers are not going to be there of personnel.
Your aircraft, you've got the Tempest coming online in the 2030s. Well, that can be either manned or unmanned. So there you don't need really that many men. I mean, and so you lose your materials, but you can always get build more tanks, aircraft, and ships, but you can't bring back men. So it's going to go that way.
It is going to go that way.
In the 2030s, 40s, and 50s, there'll be less men on the battlefield and more equipment that is so advanced. But the ultimate is to kill without being killed.
Yeah, well, we're seeing...
That is the ultimate, and that's what... I mean, all right, that's for the future. That is for the distant future. But what I say is if you want more money, say goodbye to Ed Miliband and his Green Dream.
I think we're getting to the point where we have to make decisions about, you know, if we could take even just half of that money off the Green Dream, which is turning into a nightmare for anybody who has to change a boiler in 4 years' time or buy a car, and give it to the military, because the military at the moment is only 56.4 billion. It's not very much. So if you want to double that, give it, you know, take it. We have to make decisions. What's more important?
Well, look,
and some would say, well, it's the planet. We need to be green, but there's no point us being zero emissions if everyone around us isn't.
Do you know, apart from, I mean, you might know this or you might not know this. I mean, this is sort of in parting, but the Chinese, apart from having coal, oil and gas, they're looking into the feasibility of putting a kilometre-long array of solar panels in space in the geosynchronous orbit.
Yeah, and they're working on a chemical reaction that will produce endless clean energy as well.
And they're gonna beam the sun's rays down as microwaves and reconstitute them on a ground station and feed it into the national grid. All right, it is the next step for solar panels, but it will happen.
Yeah, and actually, Elon Musk apparently is livid that he didn't come up with it first. Mind you, he doesn't invent anything.
And they're going to do it. And not only that, the Chinese are going to intercept the satellites to, if that 2024 asteroid comes too close, to knock it off course. So, I mean, I know that they're a horrible, regime, but they certainly do have some ideas, and it wouldn't. And Starmer and Reeves and Miliband should be looking at the Chinese for those ideas.
Have you seen the images of the new fighter jet that China have just launched?
Well, no, but
oh my God! It looks like an alien spacecraft. It is beautiful.
It's probably around the sort of technological.
It's extraordinary.
What will be with the Tempest? Because us, Italy, and Japan are currently doing the research on that.
I think it's far ahead of the Tempest, from what I can see. Have a look at it. Have a look at it. It is absolutely extraordinary. But listen, Pat, I'm with. We have to start making decisions on how to spend what money we've got, and I personally believe that defence is fairly urgent in this day and age. Good to talk to you, Pat. Thank you. I've got to take a quick break. When I get back, we'll be talking to Kevin.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
Hi there, good morning to you. This is Talk and it's Petrie here until 1 o'clock, which gives us about 10 minutes. So let's go straight away to Kevin, who's in Basingstoke. Thank you for waiting, Kevin.
That's all right. Good morning.
Good morning to you. So what's your solution to fund the defence of this fair isle?
Well, we definitely don't want to cut public services anymore. We've had 14 years of austerity and public services are on their knees, so we can't cut it anymore. So I think we need to increase taxes on the top 1%. I mean, the top 1% in this country have as much wealth as the bottom 70%. So we should be going after the people with the most money to fund the military.
I absolutely agree. I say it a lot on this programme that when we look at the state of this country and we blame it on, I don't know, immigrants, or we blame it on anybody, we should be saying corporations need to pay their fair share, and so do the very rich. And I presume you mean by the very rich, it's not just those independent rich people, but also those corporations that don't pay the tax that they should pay.
Well, yeah, I mean, you hear stories of companies that earn hundreds of millions of pounds, and then you find out that they haven't paid any tax for 5-6 years.
Yeah, because they've done a deal with HMRC. We're so afraid of these people. Oh, they're going to leave. They're going to go. They're going to, it's going to be a brain drain. Well, a lot of these companies won't go. And we say, yeah, but we've got to be nice to them because they employ people. But they're still going to employ people because they need those people to work for them to make the profit. I mean, look at the banks. You get a quarter.
The banks aren't going to move, are they? It's same as if you own Sainsbury's or Tesco's or all the infrastructure in this country, all the buildings. If that's where you're making your money, if you own everything that you see when you look out your window, somebody owns that. Majority of people in this country don't own it, so they're not going to up and leave when they're making all that money here.
No, and the banks definitely won't go because this is the financial centre of the world still, just about hanging on in there. But you see banks like Barclays making 100 billion in profit in a quarter.
I know, and so I saw BP, they were making like £50 billion a quarter as well, and I mean, so why can't they pay a bit more tax to, support Ukraine? Because we can't just give in and let Putin invade another country and just say, yes, you can take as much land as you want, or as much land as Donald Trump said you can have.
Yeah.
I mean,
and that is the position we're in, right? What we're going to do is we're going to give Russia everything and take everything off Ukraine. And that, that isn't moral. It isn't fair. It isn't right that an aggressor can just take and look. As much land as he's got, that's all he was able to take, which is a testament to the Ukrainian people. And we're going to say, oh well, you can have that. Why?
Well, I mean, but haven't Ukraine taken a bit of land from Russia?
Yeah, and they're deliberately doing that. They're pushing in that area now, so they've got something to negotiate with. But unfortunately, it's a much smaller parcel of land because they weren't allowed into Russia, remember? Russia set all the rules in this war. We can bomb your cities, but you're not allowed to bomb ours. And there was an agreement from those of us that were supplying weapons that they wouldn't be used inside Russia. So Russia has already had all its own way.
Well, yeah, I mean, NATO have supported Ukraine, but they've sort of tied their hands behind their back.
Absolutely, and they've given them a slingshot and tied their hands behind their back. I mean, it's not been a war that Ukraine could ever win because of the rules set by us and by America to say, right, here's a missile, but you can only use it in Ukrainian territory. You can't fire into Russia. And it wasn't until recently, if you remember, that permission was given, I think it was by Biden, to use missiles against Russian infrastructure, but only so far. Right? They weren't allowed to go very far into Russia.
I think Ukraine are using drones to bomb oil oil fields in Russia. So they can bomb Russia. They have been doing that, but I mean,
but they haven't had the big weapons. Yeah, they haven't had the big weapons because we've put a block on them using them. So they haven't been able to fire deep into Russia, and the drones are their own drones, so they can do with them as they like. But any weaponry that's come from another country has had limitations placed on it. So Russia has had it. I mean, I was thinking, well, how come Russia can say you're not allowed to bomb inside Russia when that's all they're doing is bombing inside Ukraine? This whole thing has felt completely imbalanced and completely wrong.
Well, yeah, I don't see how Donald Trump can negotiate a peace deal without Zelensky being there. I mean, he can't force Ukraine to.
Well, he thinks he can. He thinks that he can say to Ukraine, "You either accept this peace deal, but there's no more support from America."
Yeah, but I mean, why don't I can't see why NATO countries can't support Ukraine more when after 9/11, that's the only time that Article 5 has ever been triggered, and it cost the UK supporting America, which is the richest country in the world. I think it was nearly £50 billion. We've given Ukraine £15 billion, and they're one of the poorest countries in Europe.
Yeah, well, we attack on one is an attack on all, but only if you actually want to do it. But we did do it. We went to America's aid and then got into the most ridiculous and pointless war that was expensive and achieved nothing and killed lots of people that none of this country supported in the first place. But we did it, right? And now we've got to be able to stand on our own 2 feet like big girls and boys and defend ourselves. Because America is not going to come and help us with anything.
I know.
They don't have to. Even if we were bombed by Russia tomorrow or Iran, America could say no, it's nothing to do with us. We're not doing it.
But the thing is that NATO buy a lot of equipment from the USA.
Yeah.
So we have got. If they don't support us, then we will stop buying their hardware.
Yeah, and I think there'll be countries like Germany who've still got Ramstein that would chuck the Americans out and say, right, well, there's no point having you here then. If you're not going to be part of defending us, get out of Germany. And there are other countries. They've got bases all over the world.
I mean, Trump seems to be picking on his allies and not his enemies. He seems to be friends with Russia and China.
Yeah.
But his neighbours, Mexico and Canada, he's putting tariffs on them. I mean, how can you do that to your closest ally?
Yeah, and Canada and America, Canada have stood by America in every stupid war that they've ever got involved in, right? And now Canada's afraid that the military is going to be used against them. Look, I can't make head nor tail of it, frankly. I mean, why would you attack your neighbours and your friends first and snuggle up to dictators around the world? I just find it odd. But Kevin, I'm in total agreement with you in terms of taxing the rich, the very rich, the 1%. And those corporations that are making billions and billions of pounds a year in profit out of your pocket, they need to pay more. Good to talk to you, Kevin. Thank you. Last call goes to Chris in Epsom. Chris, we've got about a minute or so.
God, you've left me short. Right, first of all, Starmer hasn't thought about putting British boots on the ground. He's underfunded like every other government has since the Berlin Wall fell. They've underfunded, understaffed. They've realised that the SA-8 is no good, that we're switching to the AR-15 with interoperable rail component, so you can switch to what type of sites and that they have. But he's only ordered 10,000 of them. He's also taken away the death duty that soldiers used to get. So now, if you die defending your country or going to Ukraine to help, your family's going to get taxed 20% on any future income you get as a soldier. And the worst thing is,